We are recording right now. I'm just going to state that the May 28th, 2020 meeting of the Yarmouth Zoning Board of Appeals is about to convene. As a precautionary measure to reduce the spread of the coronavirus, all town buildings are closed to the public, and this meeting will be held by remote participation. My name is Kathy Williams, and I'm the town planner. I'll be serving as moderator for this virtual meeting. I will now turn it over to the Zoning Board of Appeals. That's you, Sean.
Good evening. My name is Sean Igo. I'm the chairman of the Yarmouth Zoning Board of Appeals. I would like to call the roll of the members. I'll start with Susan. Susan Britta, could you identify?
Here.
Tom Barron.
Here.
Dick Martin.
Present.
Tom Nicanello.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. I'd like to make a motion that we hold this meeting by virtually.
Second.
Actually, I'd like to have somebody make a motion that we have a.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Nicanello to hold a virtual meeting consistent with the COVID-19 regulations. Second to the motion.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Martin. All those in favor?
Aye.
Could I have a roll?
Aye.
Mr. Martin, Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Mr. Nicanello,
Yes.
Ms. Britta?
Yes.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously.
Would you like me to read how the remote participation works, Sean? The script?
Is that for us or is that for?
I typically read it at the beginning of the meetings for the public as well as the board members.
Go ahead, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the governor's March 23rd order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Yarmouth Zoning Board of Appeals is being conducted via remote participation. Although no in-person attendance will be permitted, every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access and participate in the proceedings. Persons who would like to view this meeting while in progress may do so by watching via this virtual meeting. Unfortunately, we're having some difficulties with the live feed on YouTube, but we will put a recording of this meeting on the website as soon as possible. We ask people to please be patient as we work to overcome any technological challenges. For all meetings, to reduce confusion during the meeting, all audience participation will enter the meeting muted and participants will be unmuted when called upon to speak. All votes must be roll call votes. If you are not speaking, please mute yourself to avoid unnecessary background noise. Do not use speakerphone or Bluetooth devices when speaking. For applicants and presenters, they can raise their hand or press *9 on their phone to identify themselves to the chair, and the moderator will unmute applicants when they are called upon to speak during their portion of the agenda. Applicants or presentations provided by the applicant will be displayed during the meeting by the moderator. If pre-approved for larger projects, such as the one that we're having tonight with Wise Living, temporary panelist capabilities may be given to the presenters to share their screens while giving their presentation. All presenters and speakers need to identify themselves by first and last name and affiliation when speaking. For public hearings, during the portion of the hearing designated for public comment, the chair will ask who in the audience has any public comments or questions. Members of the public may speak by pressing the raise hand button and waiting for the chair to call on them, or if you've dialed in by your phone, press *9 on your phone to indicate that you would like to comment. As an alternative to making comments via the online audio or phone, you may also submit comments to the moderator via the virtual meeting chat function. To do this, click on the chat icon and type your message. When prompted, the moderator will read comments and questions into the record. Members of the public recognized by the chair are asked to identify themselves by first and last name and affiliation for the public record, and then provide their comment. Prior to concluding opportunity for public comment, the chair will ask one last time if anyone wishes to speak or give additional comment. I will now hand the meeting back to the board.
Good evening. This is the May 28th, 2020 regularly scheduled meeting of the Yarmouth Zoning Board of Appeals. We have 3 matters on our agenda tonight. The first matter we're going to take is petition 4847, Mary Jo Gregory, 65 Ellis Circle, Yarmouthport, Massachusetts. This property is in an R40 zoning district. The applicant seeks a variance from zoning bylaw 202.5F6 to operate a travel agency in a residential zoning district. Ms. Gregory present?
Yes, I am.
Good evening.
Hi.
Could you tell us about your petition, please?
I will. You make it sound so serious, operating a travel agency. Please, let me just share with you what my intentions are. I've been in business since 1991. My office is presently located in the Theater Marketplace in Dennis Village. My clients are by referral and by appointment only. I am a one-person office with an assistant, and I attribute my success to the personal relationships that I have developed with my clients, the know, like, and trust. After that initial one-on-one meeting, we then can go off quite often through emails and phone calls. So I determined that my average in my office last year, which was a really good year, was probably just 2 a week. So I've been through other lows in the industry. I started my business during the Persian Gulf War. I've been through 9/11, and during the 2008 recession, I moved from a larger office in the complex to the smaller one. And now I'm in the smallest one, and now I have COVID. And COVID is nothing like any of these other travel industry situations. I'm going to use that word that I can't stand. It's unprecedented. The travel business has been imploded. My business has been imploded. I have done nothing but cancel everybody for the year. I have no book of business left. I don't know if you know that we only get paid after a client has traveled. So in my industry, I don't foresee me having any income from my travel agency until maybe mid-July 2021, if then. The projection probably is that 2022 is going to be the boom year. So out of this bleak financial future, I am asking if I might be able to move the office to my home. I know I can have an office in my home, but for me, it's bringing my clients in, their friends. It's just so important. My office, I'd like to recreate my office from Dennis Village into my home. It's me, it defines me. My office defines me. It's like going into a trip memory. My artwork, the mementos, it's a part of my personality. And for me, if I have to meet them in Starbucks, it just takes away from who I am and my success. I live on a quiet street. I think I have a neighbor who has supported it, and I think another neighbor sent you a letter. I am a widow. I am not overly active. I mean, really, if I have somebody come to my home, it would be like I'm having a friend visit. And so I'm hoping that you will understand the situation and allow me to have clients at my home. I'm not operating a huge travel agency. I never have. I'm not having any buses going up and down the street. Will have no sign. I just want my friends, my clients, to be able to come into my home where I will have a larger computer to be able to go and welcome them and do the kind of work that I'm known for.
Okay. I'm going to go to the board members in a moment for questions, but I just have a couple of questions to start with. Do you currently have an office that you work out of?
Yes, I do. It's in the Theater Market. Oh, in my home?
No, outside of your home.
Yes, it's at the Theater Marketplace in Dennis Village. And I am hoping to be able to save $650 in rent, which would be very important for me in the overall scheme of my finances. I loved my office there, believe me, I love it. But I can't see that I can sit there and twiddle my thumbs for the next 8 months, spending $650 with no business.
Well, you realize that what you're asking for is a variance because that's not an allowed use. The reason why it's really not an allowed use, from what I gather from looking at your situation, comparing it to a home office, is because you have clients come into your home. I know it may be not many clients, but that's prohibited in the home office. So is there any way that you could do your business without having clients come to your home?
With my already present clients, yes, because they know me and I already have a book of business with them, yes. But for me, I am about being with people. And for me to go to Starbucks, I'm just an 800 number on the internet.
Mhm.
There's just no personality there. It's not warm. It's not inviting.
Mhm. Okay, okay. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to the other board members to ask you some questions if they have any. Susan, do you have any questions for the petitioner?
I do. Is this are you looking for a permanent variance? Or is this a temporary from now, from 9 months or 10 months or whatever? Is this a permanent variance?
I would prefer it to be permanent because if I give up my office in Dennis Village, I won't be able to find that kind of an office again.
Yeah.
And to tell you the truth, at age 74 in August, it might be that I have 2 more years of actually really needing people to come in. My projection is that I will stay in business as far as the people I already have until maybe I'm 75, another year and a half. After that, I could manage my business with no clients because I'm looking forward to trying to put together women's groups, and they'd be from all over the country, and I might do 2 a year, and it would be more of an internet interaction situation.
So well, I'd like to echo, Sean's concern that, this really is not allowed. I would be more favorably inclined to consider it if I knew that there was a specific time frame associated with this request. That's number one. Number two, I'm always concerned about setting precedent. You've got a compelling story. I don't think there would be a problem with it, but I am concerned about, because there'll be others. I'm sure there are other residents, other citizens of Yarmouth that are facing the same situation you are. So, I mean, those are my thoughts. I would be.
Can you give me 2 years?
Pardon me?
Can you give me 2 years?
I wouldn't give you that long. I would give you maybe a year, 10 months.
I don't have anybody to come to my office. I mean, I just don't have any clients right now.
Well, I mean, Mary Jo, I don't want to debate it, but I mean, maybe a year, and at the end of the year, you can come back to the board and ask to have it renewed or something like that. But, a lot can happen in 2 years. And we already have someone, I think, I haven't seen the letters, but I understand there is one, Sandy, is this correct? There's someone, one of the residents or one of the neighbors has objected to this petition? Is that correct?
I didn't see that. I just have one right across the street, Mr. Cronin. That's the only correspondence I received, and he was in favor.
Okay, all right.
And actually, my neighbor is Eric Tolley. I don't know if that makes any difference. He said it was fine.
Well, it depends if you like Eric, I guess.
Well, I know, I've heard that before.
In any event, those are my thoughts. I would be nervous about granting a permanent waiver in this instance. I really would be. That's it. Thank you, Sean.
And just for the record, I think we all like Eric. So, and we're going to move on to Tom Nicanello. Do you have some questions for the petitioner?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, Mary Jo Berry. Thank you for staying in our town. And you said you had a business in Dennis and you want to come back to Yarmouth. That's great. Is this a neighborhood that you know is kind of real quiet and it's desolate? It's very, very nice, as you know, you live there. You have a nice neighbor who's willing to support you. Could you tell me exactly, maybe in about a year from now when your business picks up, what kind of vehicles, what kind of traffic would you be looking at a week basis?
I am anticipating, because I work by appointment only, I can manage. I am anticipating one, if that, a week for an hour. It would be like me having a friend over. Like the neighbors in the neighborhood having guests over.
Yes, that was my point. I'm trying to see the difference between, you know, a large family and family members, and you're all by yourself. You said you're going to have maybe
Right.
one car. Was that a week?
I have one car. I have a 2-space off-site parking. I have one car there. My whole right side of my house is a marsh. I don't even have a neighbor on the right-hand side of my house.
Right. Yeah. Well, as you know, as the other board members said, you know, everybody would love to have an office in their house and conduct business out of their house, but it has to be in the right area. And to me, it's you know, it's a sticky wicket, because someone gets, you know, and then they want to do it, and then the next person wants to do it. And you're very low level. I have some understanding that it could work, and you're going to be doing this for not too much longer. I hope for a long time, but it sounds like you will be giving it up probably by definitely 2024. So those were just my questions, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. You can go to the next board member.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Martin, do you have some questions for the petition?
I don't think so. I understand what she wants to do, and I understand her philosophy behind it and reasons for it, and I think they're all valid and good reasons. On the other hand, the whole, you know, we have to look at the whole thing relevant to a variance and meeting the criteria and so forth. I know Dennis is much more lenient when it comes to home occupation. What she wants to do would be allowed by right in a residential zone. It is not in Yarmouth, unfortunately. So I know it's difficult, and I think if we did decide we could and would give relief, that it should be for a short period of time through the pandemic timeframe here.
Okay. Mr. Barron, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. I really question the petition seeking the variance under 202.5 F6. The F6 says transportation services, and for RS 40 it is not allowed.
Correct.
I think that the petitioner should have considered the provisions in the bylaw at 416.2, paragraph 6. And the reason I'm bringing this up is as a member of the planning board, we spent a year talking about home occupations, and this provision has recently been added to the rules for the town. It reads this way: home occupations shall not permit clients or customers on the premises, not have on-site retail, not result in increases to traffic or parking, and not permit deliveries or shipping other than through U.S. Postal Service, FedEx, UPS, or similar services. So I don't think the petition has a valid basis, and I would be totally against its approval.
Okay, thank you.
May I say something?
Yes, go right ahead.
First of all, I did not apply. The petition was created for me with the help of Sandy and with the help of Mark. I because I couldn't go and discuss it with anybody, we did this all over the phone, and I
Yep.
was guided by them. So please don't think that I did this wrong. I was told what to do.
And if I could just interject there as well, because I did take a look at this and I had a question about it with the building commissioner as well. We could only fit this in what's called transportation services under the bylaw. It wouldn't fit under a home office, because what you're really trying to do here is you're not trying to run a home office. You are trying to run a travel agent. And so that fits under transportation services under the use table, which would be F6, I believe we're looking at, yes. And in a residential district, it's not allowed, and therefore you have to come for us for a variance. Now, what you really want to do, as Mr. Barron pointed out, if you did look under home occupations, you'd be fine, and we could grant you a special permit versus a variance if you met the criteria. However, you would not be able to have clients come to your house. That's why I asked you that originally. So if you could do that, you would probably get the relief that you want. What you're asking for here tonight is the variance. I don't know if you had the opportunity to review the variance criteria, and that's under section 102.2.2, and I will read you what it says. Is that we can grant a variance. It says literal enforcement of the provisions of this bylaw would involve a substantial hardship, financial or otherwise, to the petitioner or appellant. That's the first criteria. The second is the hardship is owing to circumstances related to soil conditions, shape, or topography of such lands or structures, and especially affecting such lands or structures, but not affecting generally the zoning district which is located. And desirable relief may be granted without either substantial detriment to the public good or nullifying or substantially degrading from the intent or purpose of this bylaw. Now, variances are very difficult to get. And that second prong, owing to soil conditions, topography, and shape, it's very difficult to meet that, and that obviously doesn't apply here. You're looking for what's called a use variance, all right? But I don't believe you qualify for a variance, because I think if we were to grant you one, and this isn't you specifically, this is anybody that would come before us that wants to operate a business where customers have to come to and from their homes. And the purpose and intent of the bylaw here, and under our zoning bylaw, when it says no, the purpose and intent is the voters of Yarmouth don't want to have commercial businesses operating in residential districts. There are certain carve-outs, and one of them is the home occupation. If you were to comply with that, you probably could get a special permit. I would agree with Mr. Barron. I don't believe you do meet the criteria of a variance here. What I might suggest to you, because you're dealing with COVID right now, you have indicated to us that you know, you're really not in business right now. You don't have anybody that's going to come over to your house. I don't know if you're talking to people on the phone or what have you, and I don't know how long your lease runs. But you may want to, at this point, you know, it's your own business, so we don't want to tell you how to run that. But you may want to try to fashion your business where you could comply with the home occupation section of the bylaw. So you could run a business out of there, but it would prevent you from having people coming to your home. Now, whether you could do that virtually like we're doing now, I don't know if you could do that. That might be the new way. We don't know how this is all going to pan out. I've heard people, I'm sure you have, and everybody else has, about people saying this might be the new way that people do business virtually like this. This may become much more commonplace. And in a business like yours, you know, where people, you know, you might be able to do that. I don't know. I think right now, though, you've even said yourself that there's not a lot of urgency because you don't have any business
Other than,
other than your current clients.
no, may I,
Yes, certainly. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Other than the clients I already have, who I absolutely have been monitoring, yes, I have been on the phone with them. But please tell me, if I wasn't supposed to be doing a variance and I was supposed to be doing a special permit, why wasn't I told that? Why have I spent this time?
I must have, excuse me, and you must have misunderstood me. The reason why is because you told the building commissioner that you were going to have people come over to your house.
I did.
That's not allowed under the home office section of the bylaw.
And so in order to have them, I needed a
You
variance.
can't get a special permit. So if you can't get a special permit anywhere, the only other thing you can ask for is a variance. So they were correct to direct you to
Okay.
us
That
by
makes me
way
feel
of
better.
variance.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, they were. Unfortunately, like a lot of people that come before us and before a lot of other boards, variances are very, very difficult to get because you don't qualify under the bylaw. You don't meet the criteria to get a variance.
You talk about setting a precedent. I was going down Summer Street and Lyda Minor, CPA, had a sign on her door. And from what I understand, she can have people in her home.
Well, I don't know anything about that particular location. If it's a concern to you, I would steer you to the building commissioner and ask him about that. But
Right.
I don't have any information. But I think the reason why it's in the bylaw and it requires a special permit, because I believe that the people of the town of Yarmouth do not want commercial activities going on with people coming and going in residential neighborhoods. And it's nothing obviously specific to you, as I indicated before. We would say this to anybody that came before us. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, what can I say? I've stated my case. I think I'm going to have, I went through the channels and I just feel like I'm having a friend over, but you're in charge.
Well, I'm not in charge, actually. I'm running this meeting, but the people that are in charge are the voters of the town of Yarmouth, and you're one of them. So these are bylaws that are passed at town meeting by majority vote. So that's how it became a bylaw in the town. So all we do is we just hear variances and requests for special permits, and we apply the bylaw to them, and then we make a determination from there.
Okay. I guess what you said, maybe I should move to Dennis. They're more open to it, right? Hey, Dick, you want to get me a house in Dennis?
Dennis does allow people. Dennis does allow people to come to the house. Yeah, so it is different. It is more lenient.
Yeah, I have a great piece of property.
Reasons why.
I'll call you.
Well, in terms of, in order for you to prevail on your variance, you would need 4 out of 5 votes. You've already heard me express my reservations and Mr. Barron his. So if he and I voted against it, even if you got 3 votes in favor, which I'm not sure how the others feel, it still wouldn't pass. I am willing to entertain discussion here with the board members. What I'm going to do is poll the board and ask them if they would be inclined to support this petition. Mr. Barron, would you be inclined to support this petition?
No.
Mr. Martin?
Only due to the way our bylaws are written and how this comes under the need for a variance, I wouldn't be able to, no.
Okay. Ms. Britta?
I would support it if there were a very definite time restriction associated with it. These are unusual times, but But not an open-ended forever variance. The answer would be no unless it was amended.
And Mr. Nicanello?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I have to go along with the voters of Yarmouth who wish this pilot to happen. I'm sorry, Ms. Gregory, but I would say no at this point.
Okay. Ms. Gregory, you've heard the board. We could take a vote on this, and it sounds to me as if we would be denying you. And if so, you would not be able to come back with another petition similar to this one for 2 years. What we generally do in a circumstance like this is give you the ability to withdraw your petition without prejudice, meaning you could withdraw it tonight with the permission of the board and resubmit it later if it's appropriate. Or if you wish to do it again, it would just preserve your rights. Is that something that you would like to do?
Yes, I will withdraw.
Okay. What I'd like to do, could I get a motion from one of the board members to allow her to withdraw without prejudice?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that Ms. Gregory would withdraw her petition.
Second.
Okay, hold on here. Let me write this stuff down. Going here. I think I've gotta write all this stuff.
Would you clarify for me, please? I can have an office in my home, but I can't have anybody come.
Yes, I would refer you, when what you should do is just review that section of the bylaw. It's section 416, 416. It's all about home occupations. It spells out what you can and what you can't do.
Will you say that again, please? 416?
416, yep. Just read through that and then it'll give you an idea what you can do and what you can't do.
Okay, because I actually already have the certificate for it. So I'll just proceed with that.
Okay, well, are you talking about a license?
Yes, I have something in my packet that I had it notarized and got a business license, yes.
Okay. Well, just so you know, a business license doesn't give you permission to violate the zoning. So if you're going to, and if you, let me just check something before you go here, before we take our vote on this. Okay, so this would require a special permit.
Sean, this is Kathy.
Yes.
If I might interject, she may
Sure.
simply have a home office, which
Yeah.
as long as she doesn't have any visitors and there's a whole list of things, Mark can
Okay,
sign
so-
off on that as a
Okay.
Q6 use versus the
Okay.
Q7 use, which is home occupation.
Okay, all right, very good. Good evening,
Mr.
Mark.
Chairman, very good. How are you?
Very good. How
Mr.
are
Chairman,
you?
I'm excellent. I'm enjoying my time in the office. It seems like I'm there. According to 416, the only thing that she didn't meet the criteria for was the fact that she was going to have clients there, which is why she got kicked over into 202.5. What she has in her hand, she may have a business certificate, but prior to the issuance of a business certificate, they're required to get a zoning determination from me to see if it's legal. So I signed off on it being a home occupation per section 416 of the zoning bylaw, but to have clients at home, she would need the variance for that. So I just wanted to clarify that before you guys go ahead and take your vote.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. We appreciate that input.
No problem.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor to allow the petitioner to withdraw without prejudice. It was motion made by Mr. Nicanello. Is that who made that motion?
Correct.
Seconded by Mr. Barron?
Correct.
Okay. All right, I'm going to poll the board. Mr. Barron, how do you vote?
No.
No,
On the
no, no, you
petition.
vote. Well, no. This is on the motion
All
to
right.
withdraw without prejudice.
All right, pardon me. Yay.
Yay. Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. Nicanello?
Yay.
Did you say yay?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm voting yes as well. Okay, so that's unanimous. Ms. Gregory, we are allowing you to withdraw your petition without prejudice, okay? So if you heard the town planner, Ms. Williams, as well as Mr. Grills, the building commissioner, as to what you need to do to establish a home office. You may want to just chat with them at another time, and maybe that's the better way to go. We're sorry that we couldn't help you tonight. We wish you the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Sandy, have we found Mr. O'Coin?
No, we haven't. I
Mike-
mean, I actually called him on my cell phone, so I've
Mike-
been speaking
Mike is
with him.
here.
Oh, Mike is
yeah.
here.
Yeah, Mike is
good.
here. Yep. And
Thank you.
if you would like, I can allow him to talk, Sean.
Sure.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. You were present, Mr. O'Coin?
Yes, I am.
Okay, why don't you let me just read the, what we're doing here into the record, and then we're gonna hear your request. Hold on one second. Okay. We have before the board tonight a request for a continuance, excuse me, for an extension for 1 year from the Zoning Board of Appeals, petition number 4753, which was received on June 14th, 2008 from the Zoning Board of Appeals for reduction in front lot coverage. This is from Mr. O'Coin. He's requesting a 1-year extension on the special permit that will lapse if it is not addressed or extended by June 14th. I'm going to go to the board members to see if there's any questions. Mr. Barron, do you have any questions?
No.
Susan, do you have any questions?
Yes, why are we asking for the extension?
Can you still hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
We basically have been trying to pull the permits required today, and we recently just came up with our biggest, hardest permit, which was the state curb cut permit. And we just received that about 35, 40 days ago. So it's at least enable us now to move to the next project, next step of the project.
Oh.
So
Anything fur- go ahead.
it was administrative delay, is that what you're saying?
Administrative delay of obtaining a permit from the state, basically because of the slowdown, really. I mean, we applied many a time. They did come back with different scenarios where they wanted to see things. We got the permit as requested finally, and we're looking to move on.
And you anticipate this will be the last extension, the one and only and last extension?
I do.
That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Martin, any questions?
No questions, no issues.
Mr. Nicanello, any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. Do I have a motion to extend the special permit for 1 year?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Who was that from?
Tom B.
Second.
Tom Barron? Barron. And seconded by
I second it.
Dick
Yeah.
Martin. Okay, I'm going to poll the board. Mr. Barron, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Nicanello?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That carries unanimously. We will extend your special permit for an additional year. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. A nice job of doing this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Okay. Extension for 1 year, special permit. Okay. That brings us to our final petition on the agenda tonight. Bear with me one moment. My agenda keeps eluding me. Mm-mm.
I see we've got Mr. Singer that has joined us.
Okay.
I'd like to express condolences about your recent loss.
Thank you, Mr. Barron. I appreciate that.
Okay, let me get, I will find this, I promise you. We have before us petition number 4846, Wise Living Development LLC, Christopher D. Wise, manager. Property at 822 Route 28 and 834 Route 28 and 30 Frank Baker Road, South Yarmouth, Mass. It's in zoning district B2, HMOD1 road and VCOD VC2. The applicant seeks a variance relief in accordance with section 102.2 of the Yarmouth zoning bylaw and MGL 48 section 10 for certain provisions of section 414-8 VCO design standards in connection with the redevelopment. Okay. In connection with the redevelopment of the properties into a mixed-use project consisting of senior housing, medical offices, and commercial and office use. Before we get started, I have a procedural matter that I have to bring up with one of our members. That is Mr. Barron. Mr. Barron, you sat on the petitions for the planning board previous to this?
On two different occasions.
Okay.
One for the approval of the site plan review under VCOD, and also concerning the special permit under the VCOD regulations
For the use.
for the use. Correct.
Okay. I understand that we do have people that sit on multiple boards in town.
Are you requesting me to recuse?
Well, I want to just bring something to your attention that troubles me. On May 14th, 2020, we received a letter from Kathy Williams, the town planner. The second paragraph states, at their May 6, 2020 meeting, the planning board reviewed the relief requested by the applicant and voted to provide this letter of support in consideration by the ZBA in their deliberations. Specifically, the planning board voted in support of the following relief requested for the Yarmouth Wise Living Retirement Project. And what it spells out the proposed building modulations and paragraphs 1 and 2, allowing the retention of the freestanding sign, essentially all of the zoning variance relief that's being requested. It appears that you've already cast a vote in support of this petition by way of your seat on the planning board. My question to you is, are you able to look at this petition objectively now, since you've already made a determination as to how you've already appeared to support it?
I understand your point of view, and for the sake of moving this forward, I do support the proposed activity as a planning board member, and I should step aside at this time so that the rest of the ZBA can make this determination independently. So I'll recuse.
Okay. Still having a quorum of 4 members, we can proceed with this application. Would the petitioner identify themselves for the record, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. For the record, my name is Andrew Singer. I'm an attorney in Dennisport. here on behalf of the applicant. With me, who's also joined as a panelist, is Kieran Healy, who is the project engineer. The plan that you are seeing on the screen share is the one main sheet of a very large packet of plans that we gave you that in red highlights all of the relief that we are seeking. I would like to reemphasize that well, let me back up for a second. You do have a number of pieces of information that are up electronically that were posted by the town. You have my summary of reasoning that we submitted as well, and I will be going through that, and then we're happy to answer any questions. What I wanted to reemphasize is that the use that we're seeking is allowed by special permit, and as is in my summary of reasoning and it's in your packet, the planning board has granted that use special permit. So what we're here tonight before you asking for variance relief from is not the use. We are here, and I will go through it as I noted on this sheet S2B that's before you on the screen, relief requests from certain design standards that are in the VCOD 2 zoning bylaw, given some of the unique circumstances of this property. And you're familiar with the property, I know, as you know, you all drive up and down Route 28, and the aspects of the relief that we're asking for that I will go over are distinct. There are 5 of them throughout the site as shown, and we were asking for this relief that we have, as you noted, did discuss it with the planning board. This project has been in the works for many, many months. We have gone through the process throughout the town through design review, site plan review. This project also, because it's in the VCOD, required VCOD site plan review from the planning board. So we actually went to the planning board twice, once for the VCOD site plan review and once for the use special permit. The parts that we're asking for relief from, and if you have questions about any of it, we do have detailed plans so we could zoom in on those, but this cover sheet here is a very nice overview. As for the relief, this site has, what we're doing is there are 3 properties that are being combined into one. The current Irish Village Motel property, the commercial office building to the east right on Route 28, and then there's a smaller vacant piece of land to the back of the village, which is included. The lots will all be merged into one, so interior lot lines will be removed, so we're not resulting, there will be no setback relief that's requested. These are all design relief. And what the applicant is doing to create this senior living opportunity in the main building and keep the existing commercial uses in the existing smaller building is to reuse the building. There are going to be upgrades, significant upgrades, aesthetic that we'll discuss. But because they're reusing the building and because they're reusing the septic systems and a lot of the drainage, there are site limitations that are affected by several of the design criteria of section 414.8. As for the main building, the requested relief that does not comply are a number of there's roof modulation and outer building wall modulation requirements in the zoning bylaw. And what the applicant is proposing is to provide a number of these, but to have them open-sided, not enclosed. Part of the reason for that is if you enclose them, they bump further out and get closer to the septic system that, again, we're trying to reuse. And so that presents some issues, but also for aesthetic reasons, as I'll discuss. So we're requesting permission your permission through variance relief to approve the designed upgrades of the main building as shown on the plans. They comply with almost every requirement, but not the few that were set forth. Similarly, with the smaller building, 834 Route 28, we're proposing to, on the west side of that building, do all of the modulations that are required except the opening where the cursor is that Kieran's pointing at now, that will be open as well because it gets so close to the driveway that goes by. And we're asking for relief on the east side of the building to not do further building modulation because it would actually then push that building into a violation of the side setback. Right now it complies, but if you put a bump out on that side or do other cutting into the building, it would either violate the setback or really interfere with the building. And if you've been by, and we submitted photographs to you as well, there is a fence along that common property line from the condominium next door. And so that side of the building is very well screened right now. No changes are proposed on that side beyond what's on the plans. Those are 2 of the 5 requests. The third request is there are 2 freestanding signs on Route 28 right now, which makes sense because there are 2 separate properties with 2 separate uses. The applicant will be repurposing the sign for the senior living on 822, but when the property becomes merged, as we worked with the building commissioner, all of a sudden that second existing sign becomes a second existing sign, which is otherwise not allowed. For safety reasons and access into where it's always been, we're asking for permission to maintain that second existing sign with no changes. It'll advertise the uses that are in that smaller building as it does today. The fourth change is along the front of the property. There is a sidewalk along Route 28 across the front of the property. One of the VCOD requirements is to provide a sidewalk in front of the property, on the property. If we were to do that, you wind up with, in this area, a double sidewalk, which raises a whole number of issues. What we proposed in lieu of that, and that's part of the relief, is to provide an 8-foot easement to the town so that if the state or the town ever wants to relocate the existing sidewalk on Route 28, make it bigger, move it around, however it would be, that then the easement would be there and that could be pushed onto the property. So we're asking for that relief. There is a significant landscape improvement on the front west side of the property that's Kieran's circling right now. And so what we're asking is not to build a second sidewalk right in front of it all along the property line. The final piece of relief that we're asking for has to do with 3 in-lot tree islands. Because we are reusing the septic systems on the west side of the building and on two areas that Kieran just showed on the west side of the building and one area on the east side of the building, an actual tree in those new islands the roots would be interfering with the septic system. So what we're asking to do to provide the islands, to still provide the separation in the parking aisle fields, but to put shrubs in those 3 islands instead of trees. And then on a fourth in-lot tree further to the back, we're not asking not to do it, but we're asking to relocate it in order to avoid the septic system so that this would have the tree in it, but it would also require relief because it doesn't meet the parking space separation for where you have your in-lot islands. We are still meeting all of the overall lot tree requirement. There are a number of trees on the property, both between what is now 822 and 834, along Frank Baker Road, out front, new ones are being proposed and retained. There are a number of trees on the property. The parking lot breakup intent of the in-lot tree requirement, we believe is being met, but we are requesting those few changes. As you know, because this is a variance, we need to demonstrate a hardship, financial, practical, or otherwise, that relates to the land or the structures. In this case, the hardship that the applicant is facing is entirely related to the structures that are on the property and the structural infrastructure that is there as well. So it has to do with the size of the building, the shape of the building, the location of the building in relation to the drive aisles and the parking that go around the building now, as well as I mentioned, the septic and the drainage fields. The applicant respectfully submits that the proposal satisfies the variance criteria requirements and that the variance can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without derogation from the intent or purpose of the bylaw. As noted, the aesthetics of this building, the main building, and to a lesser extent, the smaller building, but particularly the main building, are going to be significantly upgraded. Right now, the east and west sides of the building are flat roofed. There is going to be a new facade put on the entire building so that it is going to have a much more traditional appearance. As with that, the lighting is also being upgraded on the site. At the front of the property, and I think Kieran's pulling it up now with the elevation sketch, there's going to be a new porte cochere put on the front of the building right there, which is also going to be along with the other changes to the building, both along the front and the sides. Many of them are bump outs on the sides at the all the way down the building, but open. The new roof elevations that Kieran was just pointing to, cupolas, there's going to be a very significant upgrade to the aesthetic appearance of the property. And so that will still be happening. We believe it was not derogation of the intent or substantially detrimental. It is something, as was noted, that the planning board has reviewed as part of their site plan special permit review and their use special permit review, and did look favorably upon it. This is a very large building, as you can see in these plans, and it will look much, much improved over what it is. We feel will look better with the open-sided gables and columns and that we are showing, as Karen's showing, as opposed to enclosing those and having physical bump outs that would be getting both closer to the septic system and really would not look as good on the building. The similar comments with the 834 building. We believe that the building will be aesthetically enhanced, particularly on the most public view of it, which is the west side as you're coming down, because it faces into basically the parking lot. In addition to why this is not a substantial detriment, the proposal is a mixed-use development, which is encouraged by the zoning bylaw. So the use that's being proposed, which has been permitted, will meet the intent and purposes of the zoning bylaw. As I noted, the existing mature landscape screening on all sides of the property is being maintained and is being enhanced as shown on the landscape plan and on the site plans. The curb cuts are remaining the same. There will be a vehicular and pedestrian cross connections between the two properties as reviewed and approved by the planning board, which will encourage people be able to cross over from the properties without going back onto Route 28.
Could I stop you right there?
Yes, sir.
Where is the interconnection between the two properties?
It is right where Kieran, if you see on your screen where he's moving the cursor, that's the vehicular interconnection.
That's a driveway to pass in between the two properties?
That is correct, and there will be stop lines painted on the ground there to ensure the circulation. That is new. That does not exist today.
So that you're not were you asking for that relief before under section 41481-3?
No, we are not asking for relief for that. The only relief is for the 5 design elements that I mentioned.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, not a problem. We also would suggest that maintaining the existing sidewalk without the second sidewalk, but providing the easement will also be to the public good if there ever is a change. We do believe that maintaining the second sign will actually enhance safety because it will continue to be where it is today and identify where people should be coming in for the businesses. There are 3 businesses in that building. As for, again, why it's not substantially detrimental, even with the design relief we're asking for, the existing buildings will remain completely conforming with the dimensional requirements of the bylaw. Building coverage is conforming, site coverage is conforming, building height is conforming. So all of the dimensional aspects of the zoning bylaw that you traditionally look at, in which people may ask for variance relief from, they're all conforming here. They're all met. We're not asking for relief from any of that. We are asking just for the relief to allow those 5 highlighted areas in red on this plan. With that, Kieran and I would be happy to answer any questions, and we appreciate your review.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to start off with couple of my own questions, and then I will pass it along to the board. You're combining these three parcels together. What is the relationship? First of all, have you got approval to combine these three parcels? Andrew?
Approval will not be, yes, Mr. Chairman, sir. Approval will not, the approval can be done, it's not needed necessarily because you'd only be erasing interior lot lines. Kieran can create an 81X plan that keeps the outer perimeter of the lot, the three lots as one lot, and just erases those interior lines. So it's just a function of having the plan prepared and recording it with the Registry of Deeds.
So I guess this is my question. 834, unless I'm missing something, 834 and 822 have absolutely nothing to do with one another. Is that fair to say, except for an interconnected driveway?
At the moment,
separate businesses. Will they be separate businesses in the future?
oh, yes, yes. The senior living and the medical facility will be in the, what is the 822 building, and the three businesses that are in the 834 building will remain. There's a hairdresser, an office building, and another retail use. But the properties will all be put into common ownership and then will be combined legally.
Well, shouldn't these come before us as two different requests? Are you only coming before us for one because you're combining all the property? Is that the reason?
Well, yes,
I mean,
if you look at
there's
the
no
application,
relationship
we
between
included,
834 and 822. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, you cut out there.
Okay. I
Mr.
look
Chairman?
at this and I'm just, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear. I think I heard your question, which is, this is being applied for together because the proposal, the owners of all the property who are selling the properties to the applicant have agreed, and the application before you includes all of the addresses, all of the map and parcel numbers, and all of the title references. So what is before you is all three of the properties.
But it's
as a
fair to
joint
say,
project.
it's fair to say that 834 and 822 have no relationship to one another.
Not
but for ownership.
Well, no, that's not correct. Completely correct, because we worked with the building commissioner on calculating the necessary parking, and there's actually going to be a significant decrease in parking because the use is going down from a restaurant and hotel to what's being proposed. So there is an expanded parking field on the back of what is now the 834 property, where Kieran is showing the cursor. That is so the parking is all together. So the connection between the properties is, one, for a mixed-use development, the zoning bylaw encourages this with interconnections, and two, the parking and the trees and the buffers are all being jointly recalculated.
Oh, okay. I mean, again, I'm not seeing the relationship except for the seller is selling the buyer three properties, and you're drawing a circle around them, and you're coming for relief for the three of them. Nothing's happening with the Frank Baker Road property. It's going to remain just vacant piece of property.
It's going to be merged. It's going to remain vacant, but it's going to be merged into the one overall lot.
Is there any relationship to that lot and these two businesses other than being connected?
I'm not sure what you mean by relationship. This is similar.
Right now, there are three different parcels, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so you don't have an 81X well, although it's an A&R, it hasn't been endorsed by the planning board. Is that fair to say?
That is correct, because we would normally, in projects like this, and I've done a number of them where you're aggregating properties, that's the last step. Because you have to get the permission to do, if you did an 81X now without zoning relief, you'd actually be creating all sorts of zoning violations. So what we're doing, and we come in the process, is to complete the review, and then title becomes all put in common, and then the lot becomes common, or kind of at the same time. But you need to get all of the zoning regulatory relief in effect first, so that you can then do that.
Okay. I think one of the concerns that I have here is that we're being asked to take this all together, all right? And if you're taking it all together, you're still keeping two separate businesses. I think this should become before us as two different requests for relief, but we can discuss that later on. I'd like to draw your attention to section 414.8 of the zoning bylaw, and that's VCOD design standards. You have that in front of you?
Correct. I will get it. That's
Okay.
actually the relief we're seeking from you. So hold on, I will go grab my bylaw.
Okay.
One benefit of sitting in my office library is I can go get the bylaw.
Okay.
I have that section, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Well, it says under 414-8, applicants for new development or redevelopment who elect to use the VCOD provisions relative to the use, intensity of use, buildings, parking, and other applicable standards provided as part of this section of the bylaw shall comply with the following design standards. Compliance with these standards shall be demonstrated through site plan review materials as required in the operational regulations of the Yarmouth Planning Board. Members of the site plan review team, design review committee, and the planning board shall also use the most recent version of the Town of Yarmouth Architectural and Site Design Standards to review applications within the VCOD. Compliance with the Yarmouth Architectural and Site Design Standards shall be mandatory for all VCOD projects. The VCOD design standards are to be applied to an entire site and existing and new buildings and structures on a site. It is not the intent of the VCO standards to allow for partial site compliance. Aren't you before this board tonight asking for partial site compliance?
By way of variance, absolutely.
So isn't this directly in opposition of the purpose and intent of the bylaw?
Well, in this, there are certain provisions of the design standards or of the VCOD bylaw that are allowed to be waived by the planning board or moderated by the planning board. In this case, the design standards of 414.8 are not. However, this is the exact same case, Mr. Chairman, as with any variance from the zoning bylaw, because by definition, a variance, whether it be for use or setback or coverage or design standards, varies the intent of the bylaw to the extent that you're asking for a variance. It's a chicken and egg. And so, yes, we are not complying with these sections of the zoning bylaw, and that's the reason for the variance, which is why the zoning bylaw and the state act allow variances.
Okay, well, I'm looking through a number of areas of the bylaw that you're asking for relief. And I've highlighted them in mine, and it seems that you're looking for quite a bit of variances contained within that section of the bylaw. Now, you just said that the planning board can waive certain standards. Did you just say that?
Yes, and the VCOD bylaw is very, very complex. All of us have been reading it many, many times. So I'm sure I will not be able to find exactly where it is now, but there are certain things, for example, front setbacks, I believe. There are certain requirements that are encouraged. But as far as the design standards we're seeking, because we went through this with the building commissioner at length on a number of meetings when town hall was still open, it was tailored and narrowed down to just the 5, and I'm happy to discuss them in more depth, but just the 5 that I went over and that are shown on the plan. We met, and we met with Mr. Grills and with Kathy, and we comply with, as far as we all know, all of the other requirements.
Well, it even says under 414-3-3, this is for a special permit. If you qualified for a special permit. And number 16, the granting of a special permit does not cause any violation of the design standards provided in 414.8. So even under special permits, you can't get one unless you comply with those, correct? So you're coming, you are correct Okay? Now, others will have their questions and we can come back to this. But I'm looking at your rationale for a variance, and I don't believe that you meet the criteria for a variance. I'll let you re-summarize that. I read your summary of reasons. And I'm not really finding that they're due to soil conditions, shape, or topography, especially affecting these land or structures, and without nullifying or substantially degrading from the intent and purpose of the bylaw. I mean, you are aware, because you've been around for a lot of years, the amount of time that was put into the VCOD. It dates back to the middle to early 2000s when we hired that gang, the Bluestone Group, to design all these village centers. Then the planning board, with a lot of different people in town, labored for a long time to come up with this bylaw. And now you're coming in tonight and asking that we basically allow you to just not comply with the design standards really at all. Which I mean, others may have their questions or have their opinions, but the concern that I have is if we start allowing you to get away with not complying with the building building modulations and the fenestrations and these things about widths and heights and styles and whatnot, then aren't we just gutting this section of the bylaw? And if we say yes to you, how are we going to say no to the next person? And isn't the whole VCOD then in jeopardy of being complied with? Because I can tell you what's happened in the past in the town of Yarmouth is that we have granted variances for people, and then we said no. And then people have run over to the Barnstable Superior Court, and I can remember one case with Judge Nickerson who said to the town of Yarmouth, you're not going to say yes to one person and not to everybody. So when you say yes to one, you're saying yes to everybody. So that's the concern that I have here. I certainly support what you're trying to do. I'm not quite sure I support the issue. What you want to do isn't the problem. It's you're not complying with the design standards is the problem that I have. So go ahead.
I'd be happy to respond to that, Mr. Chairman. As you know, each case, is taken on its own merits. And when you look at the variance requirements, Mass General Law 48, Section 10, as you know, talks about, and you've read it a couple times, unique soil condition, shape, or topography of such land or structures. There have been very few cases about what a structural soil condition, shape, or topography is. However, they generally are looking at, and oftentimes it's a use question, and this is not a use question. Oftentimes it is something that exists that cannot be reasonably, financially, practically, or otherwise reused. And so when you look at what you have here, we have an existing large building and properties that are being merged to improve access and safety. They exist. They have their own setbacks. They have their own structural appearance. They have their own infrastructure. As we discussed at length with the building commissioner and the town planner, it seems, to your direct point, Mr. Chairman, very clear that the VCOD site plan review, the VCOD standards and the VCOD bylaw, when it was being designed, debated, and voted on, was, in our opinion, anticipating that most of these types of redevelopments would be raises and replaces. You'd be scraping a site clean and then building anew. And when you do that, it's easy to comply with those requirements. You do or you don't. It was not, as we discussed or discovered in many, many months of review, all of that applicable when you had a site like this, which is a unique site, it is a very large building that is in good shape. There is no reason to tear the building down and make a new building. Just it wouldn't be financially feasible at any event, and there's no practical reason for doing that when you can substantially improve the design and an appearance of the building. This is a very unique site because of that, and because it has the ability to be combined. To your question about separate projects, I disagree with that respectfully. I have done projects, and you have reviewed projects in town where multiple properties were aggregated, and they come to you legally as one application, as long as all of the addresses and the assessor's map and parcel numbers are included. Everything has to be before you. But when they are, you're able to look at those, and you in fact have looked at those, and you do look at those. So I believe that having this as one application certainly complies with the legal requirements, and respectfully believe that in this case, where you have a redevelopment of part of the site, and it's not just as with the earlier section you read, I believe that was intended for when you have multiple buildings on a property and one is being upgraded and another's not being touched. In this case, both buildings are being upgraded to a very great extent. Variances by their definition counter a provision in the bylaw. They have to, otherwise they wouldn't be a variance. So I believe that the structures that are there do meet the intent of the bylaw and are covered by the bylaw to provide that. This is not a situation where we have wetland soils. There's not a situation where you have a rising hill in part of the property so that you cannot easily redevelop. This is a flat lot. However, it is a very well developed flat lot, which has all of these physical structural criteria that are expressly allowed for relief by both Mass General Law and the Yarmouth zoning bylaw. So respectfully, we believe that we are able to be here before you, and that in this instance, this board, now it's up to your discretion, but you have the authority to vary all aspects of the zoning bylaw, from use up to any part of the zoning bylaw you want. We're not asking you to do that by any stretch of the imagination, but that's why you look at these types of cases, case by case, and you're looking at if there is going to be a substantial detriment. And if it was easy enough to build everything, we could remove the sign. If, take for example, you say, no, there should only be one sign. We can remove the sign. We don't think it's going to be as safe. We think that's a very good reason for a variance. And so that's why we're asking for these relief, so that what's going to be there will be significantly better than what's there today, and in a way that is the most design, safety, and financially practical. I hope that addresses the questions and concerns you raised.
Well, I understand where you're coming from, but I don't think you've satisfied me relative to what I believe is the purpose and intent of the VCOD bylaw that takes up 25 pages of our bylaw. 25 pages. So it's not just a passing paragraph or a sentence. There are design standards that were placed there. There were expectations of how the redevelopment of Route 28 was going to take place. I just don't see how we grant you these variances and we can't grant and others. When you say it's on a case-by-case basis, a variance is done on a case-by-case basis. I would agree with you. I will be quite frank, I'm not seeing the criteria for a variance being met here. I'm not. I read your reasoning. You basically say it's impractical and it's a financial hardship to the petitioner. That sounds to me like it's a problem with the petitioner's building plan, or excuse me, business plan. It's not by way of what the criteria for a variance deals with. I haven't been convinced of that. And I do not agree that we're not degrading from the purpose and intent of this bylaw should we grant this relief right here. I heard you say that you can't bump out the walls or that or this. This is the first I've ever heard of that. I've been looking at this thing for over a week now. I haven't heard anything about that you can't comply with. If you are bumping out and you're creating all one parcel, you should be able to meet dimensional setbacks, at least on the 822 building, I would think. You're adding all this surrounding property. You're trying to take this all in as one property, but then you're saying we can't meet the setbacks because they're actually not all one property. They're three distinct properties.
Well, no, Mr. Chairman, that's not what I was saying. What I was talking about, and I apologize if if I confuse this situation, the building setbacks on 822 remain conforming today. What I said was that on the 834 building, if we did an additional bump out on the east side where Kieran's doing his cursor, that would violate the setback where there's no violation today. So we're asking for relief to not create a setback violation that doesn't exist today. That's the only dimension.
I can only speak for myself, but if this plan came before us and you were in compliance with these modulations and designs, and you came and you asked for some sideline setback relief, I think this board might be able to understand how a variance might work for something like that, okay? Because you can't physically move the building. That would come into play with perhaps the shape of the lot. But you're not even proposing that. What you're proposing to do is to keep exactly the same buildings that are there today with some cosmetic facades put on them. You don't want to put in sidewalks. The two buildings have nothing to do with one another. It's not like the administration building is going to be over here in 834 and it's going to service this. You're running two different businesses, okay? And you're just not complying with the standards of the bylaw. And again, I'm not trying to, and maybe it's just you were the first person to come before us that we really have to address this, all right? But I think it should be addressed if this needs to be changed somehow, that the voters of Yarmouth want to allow for this type of remodeling and partial site upgrade, if they feel that that meets the standards under the VCOD, then this is better left for town meeting and an amendment to the bylaw. And then the planning board can put something on the warrant. But for us to sit here and just grant a variance for partial site development, which clearly it says shall not happen. It's not, they missed it and, we're talking about a variance. They were specific, they didn't want that happening. And quite frankly, it was the planning board, I believe, who authored this bylaw and shepherded it through town meeting. And so if they're coming, and I'm reading the endorsements from the planning board, and quite frankly, I'm a bit taken aback by it. And I certainly support all the businesses down being able to redevelop their property. But when the bylaw is written a certain way, we have to interpret it and we have to apply it. And I don't believe that you meet the criteria for a variance here. I'm going to pass it over to, let you respond to that, and then I'm going to pass it along for others to ask questions, and we can come back to this. Did you want to respond to anything right now, Council?
No, I'd like to hear what the other board members feel as well. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Martin, do you have some questions for the petitioner?
Well, I was pretty pleased with the proposal in general, and I'm a little taken aback in terms of what the chairman is saying. On the other hand, I understand and recognize where he's coming from as well. Certainly under the circumstances, coming into conformity here with the COD requirements would be, it would be great to see that maybe even a little more was done where it could be done. I'm not sure, looking at the big picture, with the modulations and things with the building, I mean, it certainly looks 100 times better than what's there now. If you look at the number 834 building, I mean, there's very little visibility from the street there anyways. And if we're talking about adding some modulations to the east, where there's really no visibility of the building from that area anyways, between the fence and the trees there, and I'm not sure that it makes a whole lot of sense to go to that length just to meet the criteria under the bylaw as much as I guess it should be. I understand the reasoning behind, bushes instead of trees where the septic system comes into play. I think that is covered under the criteria of the variance. The fact that maybe there aren't enough modulations, maybe there could be more. I don't know, the petitioner would be able to answer that better than anybody, but what I'm seeing, I've been pretty well pleased with, because the building that's there, which they're trying to reuse and rebuild on, I think they're doing a good job. I don't disagree with, and maybe certain things in the bylaw aren't. I would have to agree with Sean. Maybe they need to be written a little bit differently to provide a little more way on especially on these redevelopment buildings as opposed to a clean slate. So, I mean, I think there's enough good here to not to say no based on and not making everything perfect relevant to meeting the variance criteria that we might like to otherwise see.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nicanello, do you have anything you'd like to questions or comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I agree with what you said about the BCOD, and I'm not too sure if anything's going to be relevant after that because the protocol is not correct. Clean demo and wiping out and starting fresh, I understand, but now we have a circumstance where this skeleton of a building is in great shape, but the outside facades are falling apart. It's been neglected over the years, and it really does need a fresh look. And I guess we're fortunate that this gentleman wants to do that in our community. We do need the housing. So as far as the way it goes and what you said, is it really relevant to continue on with some of the questions I have? I'm not too sure, but I will ask if the building commissioner is still on with us. What is the setback? I'm looking at in my book, and I can't find the exact setback for that freestanding sign on 834.
Maybe the petitioner can answer that question. They have the plan in front of them.
Right. So my point, Mr. Chairman, would be that the consignment creative edge sign.
I think it's a 6-foot setback on those.
Right?
Mr. Chairman,
sign,
Go ahead.
If I just finish my question, please. This sign is going to stay there, but you're going to give the town of Yarmouth 8 feet into the property, which then runs right through the sign. So I'm not sure how that's going to work later on, but I don't even know if the sign is at the regulated distance from the sidewalk. That's why I'm not sure if Mark was there, if he could interject what the correct footages from the sidewalk to the sign should be, because it seems awful close now anyways.
I believe the setback's supposed to be 6 feet from the property line. So if they were gonna, get the variance, I guess one of the conditions could be that the sign be properly located to meet the standard of the bylaw. Just a something to consider.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, the red line that's on the screen is an 8-foot easement, and you can see that almost goes through the front post of the sign. So the sign does meet the existing 6 feet that is required.
Do you have another question, Tom?
Yeah, but once you give that 8 foot to the town, now your sign it's not 6 feet from the line. Am I reading that wrong?
No, you are correct that the front edge of the sign would be within the 8-foot easement.
Mr. Chairman, this is Andrew. If that was the only question that we had, certainly you could have a condition that it either be moved if it needs to be, if the easement's ever exercised, or just pushed a foot further away and be 8 feet away. The reason for the relief on that is actually having the second sign itself. That is not allowed. Once you combine the properties, you're only allowed one, given the size of the property, you're only allowed one freestanding sign. That's why we were asking for permission to maintain the second existing sign that's there.
Yeah, I understand that, Mr. Singer. Thank you. I was just taking it to the next level. I mean, you're not supposed to have, two signs. I totally agree with that, but the sign is there and the buildings are going to stay operational the way they are, and they're not going to be really combined, like Mr. Igo said, that, you know, one building is going to be working with the other. So it's two different ones, which I think most of the board would probably agree with that. We do have other businesses in town that have two signs on the property, and it's not that bad. And this one's already been there, so I think we're all used to it. I just have a problem with the location of it. Number one, I think it's too close to the sidewalk right now. If anybody's driven out of there, you have to pull on the 28 before you can actually see left. But anyways, the other questions I have, I'm going to have to wait until we get the right direction. If this is all valid of what we're even talking about, because it's not proposed right. So according to the VCOD's bylaws that we have, as Mr. Igo said, the 25 pages, I'm not sure. Maybe we're going to have to define it a little bit more. This is the first time that we're having a remodel in the VCOD district, so there are some implications. Now, with Mr. O'Coin's project, he's in the VCOD, but he's starting fresh. There's nothing there. So that would probably be an easy one, but this is a little different. But I'm totally agreeing with updating the building because, like I said, the bones of the building is sturdy. The cosmetic of the building right now is not. If you go look at it, it does need repair. And I'm very excited for this gentleman to come and make it look very nice on 28. I'm not too happy about losing the commercial part of it, but that's okay. You know, 20 years ago, we were at 18% commercial rate. Now we're at 5.75%. We're not healthy. So, Mr. Chairman, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan, do you have some questions for the petitioner?
Not so many questions, Sean, but a couple of comments. One is I generally fall into the Sean Igo camp of, supporting a ton of money and time and effort was spent into developing the VCOD plan, design, standards, and it gives me heartburn, gives me agita to sort of make decisions by exception. I generally like to do what the plan says we should be doing. I get that there are, and totally understand there is never going to be an instance where people are not going to have to, apply for and discuss waivers and exceptions, because you are dealing with a fixed environment right here. As Tom just mentioned, O'Coin's got a tabula rasa. You're dealing with a fixed building, and you are going to have some relief on certain aspects. But overall, I just don't think it's good public policy to generally start out with a huge parcel on Route 28, highly visible, with the conversation grounded in a whole list of exceptions. That's number one. Number two, the sign everyone's talking about, that's a crummy sign. It should be taken down and replaced, and placed properly. It's not a great sign. The two signs should be made, even, they should look alike even if they're going to be on the same property. And the last comment I have, and this might go to Mr. Singer and the owners, the wastewater project, as you know, is coming down 28. The sidewalk issue in front of this building, is that going to be, I guess the word is okay. Are we going to have a problem with the state with that that sidewalk issue, because there are going to be, there'll be some expectation the state is going to be fixing up the sidewalks and doing other things along 28. Are you comfortable with that approach, that just by moving the setback, the easement back 8 feet, that's going to be protecting the property sufficiently? Is that, have you discussed that at all? Is that, do you think is going to be a problem?
And if I could answer that.
Sure.
The sidewalk, the 8 foot wide, the requirement right now is to place a second sidewalk adjacent to the existing sidewalk.
Right.
The existing one is 4 feet and the required one is 6 feet. It
Right.
just didn't make any sense at this time to construct the second sidewalk to have basically a 10 foot wide sidewalk. The reason I believe that the additional sidewalk was to be placed on the property was specifically if the state ever decide to either widen the road or dig up those portions of the sidewalk, that there would be space available for them to access private property as they went along Route 28. So by
Okay.
us giving the 8 foot easement, we allow all of those things to happen. And that's my understanding of why it's like that. But it
Okay.
doesn't make any sense that we would build a brand new 6 foot sidewalk adjacent to a state old sidewalk at this stage. There are a few
Okay.
other comments that, if I could just chime in with a few more comments.
Can I just have one
Yep.
other comment, and this is a general comment. This mostly goes to the board members. The Great Island development at the intersection of 28 and Seaview Ave, that was another development that it came before the board asking for, I believe, and maybe Kathy can clarify this, but I think that the owner wanted a waiver from the density issues. The planning board endorsed that for some reason. I don't know why, because I didn't think it was necessary. And she just did not want to comply with the VCOD in that area for the density that was supposed to be at that intersection. So that was another instance. We ultimately granted that waiver, but I was never happy about it because I thought, again, we've spent a tremendous amount of time and effort on these plans to have a look of Route 28 in 20 years that complies with all these overlay development ideas. And yet it seems every time we're confronted with them, we start granting exceptions. And I just don't know if that's in the long run, I just don't think that's just good public. I don't think that's just the way to go. And that's it. Those are my comments. Otherwise, I don't have any questions. I went to the site twice. I walked it twice. It is a premier site. It's huge. It's going to be highly visible. I think it will be a great addition to the town. I think there'll be great corporate neighbors across Route 28. I think their visibility is going to be beautiful. I just wish we could move forward with a project that is more in keeping with what the town has decided they in terms of design standards, they want to be promoting. And that's my position.
Thank you, Susan. Karen, did you have something you wanted to add?
Sure, yes, I brought up this screen here and specifically, this is the front portion of the east side of the building. Currently, if you can see my crosshairs or my cursor here on the screen, all that exists is from the ground to this point right here. None of this exists.
Mm-hmm.
There is a huge amount of money being spent on the property to bring it up very, very close to the standards that are required. There is a wall here and there is a wall here that juts out 6 feet. The only thing that we're not meeting is that there should be another wall connecting the outside.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't make any sense to build a wall 5.5 feet outside an existing wall for that area. So that's what the modulation is. It's not that it's not there, it's just that it's not enclosed. You can see the expense of these gables that are going to be put on here with these cupolas on top. These run the entire length of the building. And as I say, all that's here today is from this point to this point. All of this roof line is new. All of these gables are new. Everything up here is new. It's a substantial amount of improvement to the property. I'm just going to go back up to that sheet 2B, if you don't mind. It's going to take a second to reboot here. So just to go over the items again one by one, I know Andrew had already gone through them, but like this area right here, the easement, we could build a 6-foot wide sidewalk adjacent to the existing 4-foot wide sidewalk. It doesn't make a lot of practical sense. That is what the zoning bylaw requires. But with the discussions with the planning board and the discussions with the site plan review teams, and also the discussion with the site plan review and design review, you know, this was talked about not putting in this, and it made sense to the members of those boards who are also in the design stage here. So that's why this was laid out as an easement as opposed to construction. The items of the trees, yes, I can build a tree in this location and put a cone around the tree and put it down into the septic system and it will survive. But it doesn't make practical sense because we could possibly damage the septic system. And as you can imagine, a septic system that's almost 15,000 gallons of daily flow, it's a large system that we just don't want to disrupt it. Again, purely from a common sense point of view, this is why we're looking for it. Could it be done? Yes, but it's just, it doesn't make practical sense. And, you know, when we talk about these buildings, all the way along here is going to be that roof line. This is over 300 feet in length on both sides. This one is even longer. So again, there's a substantial amount of money being put into this. It's not by any means cutting things short. When you look at the amount of effort building the gables and those bump outs all the way along the building, putting the wall in there is not the most expensive portion of this. Building the roof, building the dormer, that's the most expensive portion. It's just, again, that it didn't make sense, practical sense to do it. On this side of the building over here, again, something could be built there, but it's hidden well. These are new trees being planted. This is a 6-foot wide fence right here. And driving along 28, none of this area is visible unless you're crawling along 28. You just can't see it. The other one right here, this tree in this location, the tree should be just down 4 spaces further south. That's not taken away from the intent of the bylaw. The intent of the bylaw is to break up the parking mass. We have this tree, it's just 40 feet further north. That's ignoring all the trees that are inside this area in between these two properties. Again, it's, you know, we're putting the tree in there, it's just that it's 40 feet further north. On these 3 little islands right here, we're putting in the island, which is breaking up the parking area, which is what we're trying to do, but we're just putting in bushes opposed to trees because of the septic system. And then the sign we've discussed. And those are the 5 items that we're looking for. The building is going to have a huge amount of money poured into it. The back of the building, both wings have to be sprinkled. That's going to be a huge safety for the building. There will be elevators put in the building. There will be storage areas put in the space, in the crawl spaces, sorry, in the storage spaces below in the basement that the elevators will achieve and get to. There's a new portico right here for entranceway. There's cross connections between the property. So by no means are the clients not spending a huge amount of money on this property.
Mr. Healy, let me just stop for a second. I don't think anyone has made a comment tonight about the lack of money being spent. In fact, I think we're all very gratified that money is being spent. But that's self-selected. Your client decided to do business in Yarmouth, and he's going to make money. He's investing. This is an investment. And he's investing in Yarmouth because he's going to make money. And if this is the amount of money he has to invest to comply with what the town wants to look like, then that's the cost of doing business in Yarmouth. No one has said that we think he's doing this on the cheap, or, you know, it's not wonderful looking. No one has brought up money at all. We've brought up public process, and I don't want, you know, to have you think that we think that if you spent more money, things would be better. That is not the case at all. We are, at least I'm personally concerned about making decisions that are by and large trying to stay consistent with what the town wants to see. I guess at the macro level, it's sort of the old, you know, problem of one size fits all. The planning commission, the VCOD plans have an outline, and the expectation is they're going to fit every project, and they won't. And yours is a classic case of where you do need some relief on certain things. The question is, you know, is it compelling enough for us to move forward and grant that relief? That's, I guess, you know, what we have to do as members of the board.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just also comment on that, this is Andrew. If you look at the plan that Kieran has right there, to Ms. Britta's point, and to following up on what Kieran said, if you look at the gable ends that come out, the building modulations are there. Do you see those, the railings? There are decks and patios being proposed along the side. No, Kieran, on the side down there. There are outer decks being proposed for all the residents. So the residents are going to be able to have a deck or a patio coming out of their room to be able to enjoy some fresh air. The building modulation, if it was enclosed, you'll lose all those decks. So the building modulation is there. You can see it with the gable roof that Kieran is showing all the way along. So the building modulation to the view of the building absolutely meet the intent and purpose of the bylaw. The only thing that's not there is physically enclosing them here and there as necessary, which would then require you losing the decks. It's not just a financial consideration, it's a practical consideration for the residents who are going to be living here. And as a follow-up to something that Mr. Igo mentioned, which I neglected to say earlier, as to the two properties, there is a hairdresser in the existing 834 building. That hairdresser is going to be able to service the residents of the community. Normally, Mr. Wise, the applicant, has a hairdresser a hair salon in his buildings. In this case, he doesn't have to put it in his building because there is one right next door. So that's another example, Mr. Igo, of where there is a cross-pollination between the two properties. And as Kieran said, these are not, put aside the cost. I'm not talking about costs for the moment, although there are costs associated with it. The reason why we're here asking you for the relief are the practical considerations of interference with septic, of building a 6-foot sidewalk next to a 4-foot sidewalk, things like that. I believe without setting a precedent, you can approve this relief. It is not a situation where there are significant areas of variance from the bylaw. There are a few discrete areas here. Also, if you can't find the ability to grant a variance because the bylaw says shall, then you'll never ever grant a variance, so there shouldn't be a variance provision in state law or the town law. I believe this is tough. Variances are tricky. I understand that. But when you look at a site like this, the scope of what this redevelopment is, the positives that come from it, that I think all of us, including all of the board members who have concerns expressed tonight, everyone sees the positives of the project. You have variance authority. What's being asked is minor in the scope of what people typically request for variance. It's not a use question. Use is permitted. It's not setback questions or coverage questions. They're all met. So we'd ask that you consider that in this very unique situation, for the reasons that myself and Kieran has gone through, we believe that you can find and be able to vote positively so that the project can move forward. Thank you.
I ask you a question. I want to get back to the building. I'd like you to pull up a picture of the south side of the building.
The front elevation.
The front elevation of the south elevation. What's new about that other than the entranceway?
Well, you can see the roof lines that they go back.
I can see those around the corner. What's from the left to the right as it stands right now, other than that front portico, what's brand new on the front of that building?
We're not proposing anything brand new. In fact, the design review team were concerned that adding anything to it would make it look too busy because there was so much modulation and so many different features on the building. They actually talked to us about using, and it's a requirement, I believe, that when we paint, we use some monotone paint so that we reduce that there are so many different variables on the building. They want it to look a little bit less modulated, less broken up.
Could that be designed right there to meet the modulation standards?
Well, the front does meet. There was so many breakups on this This meets all the
And
modulation
you're
standards.
telling us, you're representing to the board tonight that that meets the standards under 41418, section 414.8.3. Is that your representation tonight?
That is my understanding. The front of this building
Well, I don't
meets
want
all
your
of the modulation.
understanding. I want your representation. You're the guy coming before us. Are you representing that that building, as I look at it right now, is in compliance with that section of the bylaw?
The south elevation, to the best of my knowledge, is compliant with the modulation requirements.
Yeah, if I could also just interject, the one question I have, and since you've asked, Mr. Chairman, on the dining room side, which is the current restaurant on the southeast side of the building, there was, I believe, Kieran, there was a window, some windows were changed to meet that requirement. Is my understanding.
Why don't we talk about the windows? The windows on that side. They're obviously not in compliance with 414.8.5, are they? Because you're looking for relief from that too. The fenestration.
I'm just reviewing the bylaw, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure, I believe there might be a request there that Kieran is correct that the roof line bump outs on the south side comply with the bylaw. There may be an aspect, and neither one of us is an architect, but there may be an aspect of one of the dining room window fenestrations that is being asked for relief. And that gets back to what Kieran was saying, that design review and the planning board all actually preferred this as to actually trying to do even more, because it is such a busy south side.
Well, see, again, when you say the planning board preferred, the planning board doesn't have the authority to prefer that. Would we agree with that?
Well, I disagree with that. The planning board has the authority to prefer anything they want. They don't have the authority to approve it, which is with this board.
Well, I mean, I'm just hearing things come out of, representations that sound like they're being made here, that the planning board preferred that it looked like this. I guarantee that I think the planning board would prefer that it was brand new. Is that all gonna be brand new material on that side of the building? It is. You're gonna replace it with what's there now, because I know what the front of that building looks like, and but for that entrance, it looks exactly the same. It doesn't look like there's any money being spent there at all.
Correct.
And the materials that you're using, you're not complying with the bylaw as far as materials and how the materials are supposed to be placed. Having the heavier materials lower than the lighter materials. Okay? I'm sure you read through this section of the bylaw. It's not just the sides of the building we're talking about. In fact, that south side that we're looking at, in my judgment, is the most important facade to look at and even consider, because that's what everybody sees. They don't see the side so much. They don't see the back at all. You're right.
Mr. Chairman,
they don't see the east side of 834.
Mr. Chairman, if I might point out, the Town of Yarmouth Design Review Committee, the Town of Yarmouth Site Plan Review Committee, the Town of Yarmouth Planning Board have all seen and reviewed the plans on the south side elevation here.
Were they looking at the bylaw when they were reviewing it, I presume?
Absolutely.
So then why did anybody say, hey, we can recommend this, but it's not in compliance with the bylaw? I mean, what do we
why do you think we're here this evening? We're here this evening because that's exactly what they said. They said, this doesn't comply with these various.
They said, we want this instead of compliance. That's what they said.
What I will represent to you is that you have a planning board decision in your file where the Town of Yarmouth Planning Board approved the use of the project. We have a Town of Yarmouth site plan, a VCOD site plan review decision, where the Town of Yarmouth Planning Board said, if the Board of Appeals grants this relief, these are the plans that we're endorsing. Now, if you don't vote for it, then the plans go up in smoke and we have to go back to the drawing board on that. And I'm not trying to put words in the planning board's mouth, but you have decisions from the planning board approving the plans that are before you.
I read those decisions. Which decision are you referring to?
I do not have it in front of me, but the first decision that the planning board issued on
Are we
the
talking about the
VCOD site plan review.
Yeah, okay. Well, why don't we turn to that one? Because I read it, okay? And essentially, it's a recitation of what you're asking for. It gives absolutely no rationale for the reasons for doing this, all right? It's a recitation for what you asked them for. What you're asking here tonight, they said, this is our finding. Same thing you asked for. There's no rationale in it. There's no reasoning why we prefer this over compliance with the bylaw. I'm not trying to sit here all night, Andrew, and argue with you, okay?
I know.
So let me clear the air here, okay? Because, you know, we appear with one another, in front of one another. We know one another. We know everybody involved. We know and appreciate all our good friends on the planning board, all right? But when I read these decisions, all right, and then I read you coming for us and the rationale for a variance, I'm just not finding it. And this is what, you know, this is what you gave us to work with, okay? This is the bylaw. This is what the planning board wrote. This is what the planning board got approved at town meeting. I remember it vividly, all right? I remember the Bluestone group. I remember all the discussions about all the different village centers and how we were going to have town greens, and Parker's River was going to be a certain area, and downtown at Four Corners near the bridge was going to be done in a certain way. And that's beautiful. And then they put it to paper, and they gave it to us. And now you're coming before us and you're just asking us to throw it out the window. Susan's right. It's bad public policy is what it is. It doesn't meet the criteria. You have a great idea here. I support the assisted living. I think it's a great idea. I like how you lay it out, but you're not giving us, at least me, I'm not seeing a way to approve this. I'm just not doing it with as how it sits right now. Now I'm looking at this front right here, and I'm basically pulling into the Irish Village. The only difference is I've got a new entrance. I mean, that's it. You could just leave the Irish Village up and I drive by and go, oh, look, they didn't do anything to comply. And then I can tell you what's going to happen. We say yes to you. Okay. Then next thing you know, who comes down the road? I mean, and another thing I want to get straightened out too, because when people say, well, this guy down the street, now Susan referenced Great Island or whoever that is guy up there, Mr. O'Coin, starting from scratch. Well, unless you're going to knock down your building on Route 28, you're coming in to remodel it because that's all there is to do is to redevelop. All right. And you're not starting from scratch. You're going to take an existing building. And if you're going to take an existing building and you're coming in and you have to comply with this VCOD, then you've got to comply with it because that's what the expectation was of the voters of the town of Yarmouth. It wasn't for us to sit here and arbitrarily just say, yeah, this one looks okay. I don't think that's in our authority to do that. And I'm not seeing the variance criteria. And I look for a way to say yes. And I can be convinced. Even when I come in and I say to myself, I'm not convinced. I'm willing to listen to everybody. I've listened to you on a number of presentations in a number of cases. Maybe I'm not convinced on one and someone comes in and they have me take a different point of view here. But I'm just not seeing this tonight.
Can I ask?
I'm not hearing roaring enthusiasm from the rest of the board. I hear the board struggling to try to find it. I mean, I won't put words in their mouth, but I haven't heard anybody make an argument that, Sean, you're wrong. They meet the variance criteria, and I haven't heard the petitioner make an argument that the criteria for a variance is met. All right, I haven't heard it, and I'm not seeing it. Now, this south elevation right here, first of all, if I were looking at that, I would expect that to look considerably different. All right, and it's not me to design it, but when I drove by it, I wouldn't be seeing the Irish Village with a new entrance. I'd be seeing what I perceive to be as a new building. Have you guys priced out, by the way, You say, well, it's stupid to put a wall here and a bump out here and that. Has anybody sat down with a CAD and put all this together and say, well, what if we actually did comply? Has anybody done that? Because if they haven't, it might be worth a while to go back and play with some walls and redesign some windows and figure out how much this is actually going to cost, and maybe repropose this thing.
Sean,
Yes.
if I could, and with all due respect, I
Certainly. That's
coming from.
No, I'm kind of throwing my slings and arrows at
No,
everybody.
and I understand why. I mean, if I look at the south elevation of the building, and granted, if we were building it anew, I'd be looking for different things to be done here in terms of the style in general, probably. But I think it certainly meets what's there in terms of meeting all these different architectural looks and building lines going on. So I don't know that they really need a whole lot of change there. The real ugly part of this building is the parts that they are willing to change, which is the side buildings and the ugly flat roof and so forth. Mm-hmm. I think at least from what I understand, they're meeting the criteria, and what they're looking for relief from here is really, at least in my estimation, fairly minor. The easement for the sidewalk, the bushes instead of a couple of the trees. I mean, needless to say, they have to combine the three properties and deal with that relevant to the call it. But I think there's not a whole lot of, wouldn't it be great, I guess, if they could meet everything? But if it's only the east side of the other building that we're looking at in terms of needing some different setbacks and fenestrations and so forth, and they're meeting the criteria as recognized, so that they variance for what little is being talked about here. I think, I feel differently. I think it's actually a good proposal. Is it perfect? No, but it's not starting from square one, so I wouldn't expect it to be perfect. So I guess I feel a little bit different relevant to the fact that I don't think there's a whole lot here that we're fighting about that we should be fighting about.
Okay. Well, just to respond, because again, I'm kind of pointing fingers in all directions here. In terms of the relief requested for, well, the signs, I think we could do a much better job on the signs. I don't think.
And I would agree with that. The second sign should be.
I mean, that's the sidewalk. I mean, if there's going to be a lot that's going to happen with Route 28, I think, in the future. I mean, if they would have put down a brand new sidewalk that's only going to get torn up in 5 years or something, I mean, and they're granting an easement to the town, that I think we can work with. Is if there's a sidewalk there,
sidewalk,
right? In-lot trees, we can work around things like that. Those are de minimis. All right, those are not the things that I'm concerned with. What I'm concerned with here is really the meat and potatoes of what this bylaw says. And where they say VCO design standards, and they're very clear. Once again, you get on a very, very slippery slope when you start granting variance relief, and we start picking how this should be designed and that should be designed. And you know what happens in the end 20 years down the road? Your VCOD, okay, does not look anything like it's supposed to, and like it says it should in the bylaw. And what you have is you have a hodgepodge of people who want to do their own designs, don't want to comply. If you don't want to comply, if you don't like this, if the planning board is willing to waive the requirements, if the planning board is willing to ease the standards, the best thing for them to do is to go back to town meeting and say to the voters, look, this is a little bit too rigid, and then explain themselves to the voters. But we've had this now for a while. My idea what things look like in a VCOD are buildings that look redeveloped. And it says clearly, all right, no partial site compliance. Not to be allowed. It's not the intent of the standards. The planning board wrote it. They wrote it.
And
They
I
got it
won't
adopted.
deny that needs some,
Well, I understand, but that's not where we're at today.
Mr.
and
Chairman,
maybe it should
could-
say things like, is best feasible or whatever, and.
If
little
they
more-
want to
little
word it
more.
differently, if they want to work it out, that's fine.
Mr.
But-
Chairman, this is
Yes.
Andrew. Could I make a suggestion? If that's okay?
Sure.
Obviously, there's a 4-member board tonight, so we need a unanimous vote. Obviously, we don't have it. So I want to ask if the board, given what you just said, I'd like to propose a compromise for this evening so that we can move forward. What if we withdraw so much of the request that requests the building modulations for both buildings and just have the board look at the easement for the sidewalk in lieu of a second sidewalk, replace the in-lot trees as we've discussed, and approve a second sign, but a replacement sign that's moved 8 feet outside, that's replaced and moved 8 feet away, so it's not in the easement. Would the board be willing to entertain approval for those 3 aspects of the proposal, and we would just have to go back to the drawing board on the 2 buildings as necessary?
Well, I don't have a problem with that. I don't think. I will say this about the signs, though. I would not be inclined to grant you relief on anything that wasn't a brand new sign that basically complied with what you're required to do.
Well,
Why can't I'm curious on the sign. What's the? Don't you just need a base? And I looked through it on the sign. It doesn't appear that it's a great expense. Why don't you want to replace the signs?
No, we have no problem replacing the sign. It's that you can't have 2 signs.
Oh, 2 signs. Well,
We're just asking for permission to keep the second sign. We can, if you want it to be a new second sign, it can be, but the whole point is that as a combined lot, you're not allowed to maintain 2 separate freestanding signs. That's the only relief we're asking for.
Well, again, okay, here's the problem that I have. You're basically taking 2 distinct properties and you're trying to combine them, and yet you want the benefits of 2 different distinct properties. You want to combine them, but you want them to remain exclusive to one another. So that's why I said I thought that these should come before us as 2 different permits or requests for relief. But you've got them all wrapped into one.
Yeah, well, I mean, for practical purposes, they have to be. If they're 2 separate applications, you can't have shared parking, shared trees, shared interconnection, and violating setbacks down the middle. I mean, we could do them as 2 separate applications, but then you'd have to grant more variance relief. Whereas by doing this way, you don't.
Variance relief from the and so so you're not looking. So then you're not looking for us to give you relief on parking.
No, the parking complies.
Okay, that's presuming the lots are combined.
Correct. And right now, there's parking in front of the building, which is non-conforming, and it's being removed.
You're not asking for parking relief.
None whatsoever.
So what you're saying is you want to withdraw the proposed building modulation relief.
Yes, if you look at
22 and allow the second freestanding sign.
if you look at the summary, we would like.
I've got it right here.
Okay, yeah. If
you're asking for the second freestanding sign, the easement for future construction of the sidewalk, and replace the 3 in-lot trees.
Correct. Numbers 3, 4, and 5 on my list.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I believe the reasoning behind maintaining the second sign, I don't know that Andrew's brought that up yet, but we had, we belabored the point quite a bit during site plan review and also several meetings after the fact. And I believe that the point of leaving the secondary sign was so that if they had one sign at the entrance to what is now Irish Village, everybody looking for those businesses would be driving into the main parking lot instead of going into the separate entrance, which was actually for those businesses. And with the type of clientele that they had going in and out of the site, as well as a potential ambulance every now and then, they thought it would be best to maintain that sign and direct that traffic into that separate area. It's not going to be a separate lot. That's the way I understand it, and that's that's the way that they were able to comply with the zoning and the parking requirements.
Okay. Again, if they're going to be two businesses, I certainly have no reason to take away your second sign. You need a sign. You can't be a business and not have a sign on 28. I mean, or you're entitled to a sign. So I don't have a problem with that. But we are giving, so we're giving relief for the second sign before you're actually one lot. Is that correct? One property?
Well, this is Andrew. It's part of your relief, but nothing can happen until we do everything. I mean, as you know, with a large redevelopment, there are several chains of relief, including going ultimately to Mass Highway if there's any changes. So yes, you're giving the relief now, but nothing can be exercised and built until the project ultimately moves forward. If the project never moves forward, then your relief just never gets exercised. And if it stays as two separate lots, the sign stays because it stays.
Right. Okay.
I couldn't issue a permit unless he combined the lots. He needs the extra lot for the density.
Okay. I don't have an objection to that. I'd like to hear from the board. Does anybody else have a comment on that? Are they objecting to him withdrawing any part of the petition?
Yeah, I think this is Tom Nicanello, Mr. Chairman. I think that's a great idea to move the meeting forward.
Susan?
That's fine. That's fine with me.
Dick?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so would you like us to propose a motion then, Andrew?
Well, what I would suggest is if you make a motion to, how about this? What if I'll request that you allow so much of the petition as asked for building modulation relief for both buildings to be withdrawn without prejudice. You vote on that, and then you could make a motion to approve the remaining relief. And if you agree with that, that's my request.
Okay. Is anybody prepared to make a motion to allow the petitioner to withdraw? And we will.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. Tom Nicanello.
Hold on, wait, before we say so moved, let's make sure we got the motion. He's asking to withdraw his request for relief from proposed building modulations for properties at 822 and 834 Route 28, the requirements, without prejudice.
So moved.
Have a second to that?
Second.
Who's seconding it? Susan?
Yep.
Okay. Motion made by Mr. Nicanello. Seconded by Susan to allow the petitioner to withdraw without prejudice his request for relief for proposed building modulation styles at 822 and 834 Route 28. All those in favor, I'm going to poll the board. Susan, how do you vote?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Dick?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That's unanimous. Are you writing this down, Andrew? You're going to write this decision, right?
I am writing it down, yes.
Okay. All right. Now, we have the balance of the requested relief, which is allowing a second existing freestanding sign for 834 Route 28, which is the building to the right, the smaller building, in addition to keeping the freestanding sign for the redeveloped 822 Route 28 building on a single combined property. We wish to have some discussion on that.
I wouldn't mind. I don't have the any problem with the second sign being there, but as you said, Sean, I think it should be a new sign more in keeping with the sign for the main building, and that would be more attractive.
That actually is an issue, and I'll tell you why that's an issue. Because generally when someone is looking for something like that, they come before us with a drawing of the sign, where it's going to be located, what it's going to be made out of. So how would you address that, Attorney Singer? You don't have anything for us to look at tonight.
No, and the sign would, comply with zoning. It will, so it wouldn't normally, from a size and dimensional point of view, we'll move it back outside the 8 feet, and it'll have the same uses on it. If you would like to say, because a sign has not been designed for the main property yet, if you could add as a condition that the second sign that you're allowing will be replaced in a design that will match the new building sign, which you wouldn't normally have to see because it's conforming.
I like that.
So basically what you're just looking for is the second sign. We're not granting you any relief as to, but you are here under the VCOD. Okay, so you're looking for a variance from, are you going to comply with the VCOD requirements as to materials and base and scale and all of that?
Yes.
Yes, it's just the number, it's just the physical fact that it's a second sign. It will be a complying sign. If you want, you could make a condition that the second sign is granted relief. It will be replaced, or the existing one will be replaced, and it will match the main building sign in compliance with VCOD regulations.
Well, I mean, you're asking for a second sign. Would you agree that any sign that you put on that property has to comply with the VCOD requirements?
It does unless you grant it relief.
So we're not granting, all we're granting you for is relief for a second sign.
That's all we're asking.
So everybody understands that. It's not going to be, may not be a new sign or whatever, but if they want to develop this property pursuant to the VCOD, it's going to have to comply because we're not granting any relief for that. Everybody understands that? Now
Mr. Chairman, this is Andrew. If I could just ask a question with what you just said. I think what you're saying is that you'd be granting relief to maintain a second freestanding sign on the combined properties, but that in effect, any signs that are there need to comply with VCOD requirements for design.
Correct. Not only VCOD requirements, but the sign code as well.
Yeah.
The sign bylaw as far as size and things of that nature.
That's all wrapped up, I believe. Yes.
Okay. So is everybody, are people in agreement with that?
Yep.
Yep.
Susan?
Yes.
Okay. So do we have a motion to grant that relief to have a second sign?
So moved.
Who moved that?
Dick.
Dick, okay. And do we have a second to that?
I'll second it.
Okay, Susan seconds it. That's to grant the second sign. That must be VCOD compliant if built and must comply with any other sections of the bylaw relative to signs. Okay, now the providing an 8-foot permanent easement to the town of Yarmouth for future construction or location of the existing sidewalk. Why can't you guys put a sidewalk right over the sidewalk that's there right now?
Because that sidewalk's in the state highway layout and the requirement is to have the sidewalk on your property.
Is
So
that a state sidewalk? Or is that your sidewalk?
It would have been constructed by the state.
You sure about that?
Yeah, it falls right on line with the rear of the sidewalk, runs right adjacent to the front face of the property line.
Do you find that on a layout of that street?
You won't see sidewalks on a construction layout generally for these older roads, and this portion of 28 is older. In 1933 layout, I believe, in here. but you'll just see the baselines. But anytime you've got this granite curbing along Route 28, it's almost always put in by the state. But it's also on the,
Would you agree that if the state doesn't put a sidewalk in there within a certain time frame, that you would put the sidewalk in?
Could I ask you, Mr. Chairman, what the rationale would be for having a new 6-foot sidewalk next to an existing 4-foot sidewalk that may or may not touch up but be parallel to each other?
This is Dick Martin, and doesn't it make sense just to leave the 4-foot set sidewalk, and we're only providing the easement in case there, the road gets widened or something and there needs to be.
Yeah, no, okay, I'm just thinking, I will tell you, because most new developments, all right, would require you to put the sidewalk in, correct?
If there wasn't one.
Yeah, no, I know, you're on a state highway here. All right.
Doesn't make sense to have a 10-foot sidewalk there.
No, I don't want that. I just don't want the town to have to pay for a sidewalk down the road because we gave them an easement. Again, getting back to the bylaw, I think what the town had in mind is one of these days you'd look down 28 and you'd have a big sidewalk that ran down it. Not that the state of Massachusetts would come in and build you a new sidewalk, or that you would leave your old 3-foot wide sidewalk that's made out of, one layer of asphalt that has frost heaves all over it.
Well, I mean, the state put in the 4-foot sidewalks on both sides of 28 in that area, and I think that they're generally adequate.
Okay.
They won't be adequate if they widen the road, and that's one reason I think the easement.
No, I agree with you, Dick. I'm just kind of brainstorming here, okay? I'm just throwing it out there. Okay, so is everybody comfortable with that, granting the easement?
Yep.
Susan?
Oh, yes.
So I got Susan, Tom, Dick, you're a yay?
Yep.
Okay, I'm a yay. So do I have a motion to grant a 8-foot permanent easement to the town for future construction or relocation of an existing sidewalk along Route 28?
If necessary. So,
well, what it says here is for future construction or relocation of the sidewalk along Route 28 to the town. So
yeah.
The way it's drawn, it anticipates the town's going to put it in. Whereas right now, the developer is required to put it in. So that's the only thing. I understand the idea.
I think it's fine that we require, as part of this contingency, that the developer do it if required by work that was done by the state or town that would in essence take away the existing sidewalk or expand the road.
My only concern, Mr. Chairman, is we want to make sure that this property is not singled out. If the state someday comes along and through easements and whatnot revises the sidewalks and they're paying for it, or there's a grant that the town gets, and so the town, it's not coming out of taxes, we just wouldn't want there to be different rules for different property owners.
No, I totally agree with you there. Okay, I got no problem with that. The only thing that I see is the state doesn't do that. They just repave the road like they usually do, and they leave the sidewalk, and it's our responsibility. I just don't want the town to be paying for what is supposed to be private developers' responsibilities.
No, I understand, but here, as Kieran noted, there is a 4-foot sidewalk on both sides of the road. If anything was going to happen on the road, such that the sidewalk had to be moved, it's going to have to be moved for everybody.
Right.
You wouldn't just move it for one property. So presumably, any relocation is going to be part of the overall road widening project if it ever happens.
I'd agree with that.
Would your client agree to a little proviso in there that if such time in the future, the sidewalk needs to be replaced and the state does not pay for it, and the cost of that sidewalk replacement is borne by the town, that your client will agree then to put it in and pay for it?
Would that apply to every owner up and down
Yep.
Route 28?
Better believe it, as long as I'm sitting on it here talking about that. And as
Okay.
long as well, let me say this, as long as it's in the VCOD bylaw.
Well,
That's what it says.
what's going to happen here is, I mean, if the town, if we're really down the hypothetical rabbit hole here, but if the state widens Route 28 someday and says, we're going to use the entire road layout and we're not giving you guys any sidewalks, and the town says, we want a sidewalk, and they design a sidewalk and put in a sidewalk, then either the town's going to pay for the whole thing along every property, or the town's going to do it and assess a betterment against every property. So either way, my client's property is either going to have to pay a betterment like everybody else, or pay it through their taxes like everybody else. So I'm concerned that singling out as a condition here would be, you know, not treating all the properties the same for this hypothetical.
Well, the only thing, and I appreciate that, and the only problem that I have is, right now, this bylaw supposes that this entire strip is going to get redeveloped, okay, under this VCOD, and that everybody's required to put a sidewalk in. So now when the next guy comes, are we waiving his sidewalk requirement too?
I guess you have to, not you have to ask yourself, but the question is, it's the same issue here. This is different from building modulation. It's,
I know it is.
Sidewalks are built oftentimes, you know, if you have orphan sidewalks where they're built in sections, you don't have anything else. Here you have a sidewalk.
I understand. Well, Andrew, if I can just stop you there just for 1 second.
Sure.
This bylaw was drawn, there was sidewalks there too.
Well, actually, there's places there are not sidewalks.
So then why didn't the bylaw expand and say that anybody that has an existing sidewalk is exempt?
Probably should have.
So I'm willing to go along with that, but I want some language in there that says if the town's if there isn't a sidewalk and something happens to that sidewalk, you've got to replace it. I mean, who knows? That sidewalk could sit there for 25 years. What do you care? I don't see, I mean, how much sidewalk are we talking here? 150 feet? I mean, we're arguing about a sidewalk here that's in the bylaw. That, again, there's a lot of stuff in this bylaw. It's 25 pages long, this section.
The sidewalk will be about 400 feet long.
You got 400 feet of frontage right there?
We got 447, but with the two openings, I'm just averaging 400.
I tell you what, we'll come back to that one. Let's talk about the 3 in-lot trees right now.
Well, it's technically 4 because one of them would be a tree but relocated. The other 3 would be shrubs.
Okay. And the reason you're doing that is what?
To prevent the trees that would be put into if you put trees in the 4 places where they're supposed to be, you run the risk of the roots growing into the septic system.
Well, I mean, that certainly, actually, that might even meet the criteria for a variance there. I see, are you, and the 3 shrubs, have you identified where they're going?
Yes, Kieran's showing them to you.
Where is the tree that's coming out on the site?
This
No
one
trees
right
coming,
here.
no trees coming out on the site, Mr. Chairman. The tree that Kieran's going to show you now,
Replacing 3 in-lot trees.
meaning
So there must
instead of constructing 3 in-lot trees, we're replacing them with shrubs.
Oh, okay, so they don't exist.
They do not exist. These islands are new to meet the bylaw.
So were these trees, or are these shrubs, are they going into an island in the parking lot?
Yes.
If you can see the screen right here, here's the island,
Right.
and here's where the tree would go, right in between this portion of the septic and this portion of the septic. So by putting in the bushes in the island, we break up the mass of the parking area by the island, but it will just have bushes in there as opposed to the tree. And the same on
So
this
you
side.
feel that the root system will go into the septic system if you plant that? Is that what the rationale is with that?
That's it exactly. Now on this side, it's even tighter. There were 2 D boxes right underneath here. And on this side, we have a tank that's very, very close, a septic tank. Again, bushes will make sense in that area.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody have any comments or concerns about that? Dick? Can't hear Dick.
I'm sorry, I'm fine.
Okay. All right. You support that?
Yep.
Okay. Tom?
Yeah,
Susan?
I do. I just want to make sure the bushes are substantial bushes. They're not just some crummy little shrub that's thrown in there. They should be substantial evergreen bushes.
Is that your intent, Kieran?
The intent is to actually have them small, lower bushes because the root systems from a bush can also go down into a system. The goal is to make it green in the middle of a sea of blacktop.
All right.
That's the goal.
As long as it's green and there's an intent to break up the look and have it look green and green, that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Everybody's okay with that then? Do I have a motion?
So moved. Let's stick.
Second? Dick Martin's moved. Second?
Second,
Second by Susan to grant the relief of replacing 3 in-lot trees with 3 shrubs and relocating 1 in-lot island with tree to exceed the spacing requirement. Well, what is that all about?
If I could bring your attention to the screen, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah,
This is one of the locations right here. You need to have an island every 13 spaces, which would put it right here. But that's right on top of these septic tanks. So
Yeah.
we're moving it 4 more paces north.
okay, okay.
It'll still be a full tree. It'll just be 40 feet north of where it would be on top of these tanks.
All right, everybody sees that? Everybody in agreement with that? Dick?
Yep, that's fine.
Tom?
yeah,
Susan?
yeah,
Okay, so we have a motion made by Dick, seconded by Susan to approve that, replacing the 3 in-lot trees. Andrew, you're writing that down?
Got it.
Okay, so that relief, okay. All those in favor, I'll take a poll. Susan,
aye.
Dick,
Aye.
Tom,
yeah.
and I'm an aye as well, so that passes unanimously. So we're back to the sidewalk.
Could I make a suggestion, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah,
If you grant the sidewalk easement, what about with language that says, since it would lead to nowhere, what about language that said that if the properties on either side of the property ever are redeveloping and add new sidewalks, that the owner here would then construct the sidewalk to connect up?
well, they're gonna be required to do it anyway, right? See, this is my point. I tell you what, I think, how about you withdraw that? Why do you need it so badly?
If you
Now,
want
I
us
mean,
to
you're
build,
asking for relief, okay?
right, yeah, if you want us to build a 6-foot sidewalk to nowhere next to a 4-foot sidewalk with a little grass strip between it, I guess we can do it. It's money, but it's not going to go anywhere. It could actually be more confusing
I think it would look-
because,
I
I
tell
don't
you
think
what,
that would look right, and it's, and we want more green space there. We don't want more pavement.
I totally agree. What I'm concerned about is if the sidewalk disappears and it will wear out someday, who's responsible to put it in?
if it's a state sidewalk and it wears out someday, presumably the state. It's in state property.
Well, then why was this added to the bylaw? I'm curious. I mean, it was, Dick, were you in on any of that? Or you weren't on the planning
I
board at
wasn't
that time,
really
right?
involved in that, but I think it was put there for the reason, if there was widening going on, that there would be that ability for somebody to do that. And there are areas within the zone which have no sidewalks. There's no sidewalk in front of my office.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes?
this is Kathy Williams. The reason it was put in was exactly what had been mentioned previously. This is a state highway, so if they ever wanted to widen the roadway, for example, putting in bike lanes and that type of thing, they would need to widen the right-of-way, and the sidewalks would then end up being outside of the existing right-of-way. So Mass DOT would have to go to each individual property owner to get some type of permission, or exactly what we're asking for here, an easement, in order to extend the right-of-way onto their property. The idea was, I think the idea was being very optimistic that we would get a ton of VCOD projects and we might actually see this sidewalk being done property after property. Unfortunately, that really hasn't happened. So having the easement would eliminate the need to actually, for Mass DOT in the future, to have to come in and get that easement from this property owner. The town would then give the easement to Mass DOT. And I think we'd have to word it very specifically, Andrew, to give us the town the ability to do that, and or include Mass DOT within the easement if they wish to have it. So the whole intent was for a widening of Route 28 to be done by Mass DOT.
How
And
wide,
we have no-
how wide is Route 28 right there?
40 feet wide,
It's currently 40 feet wide?
correct.
40-foot wide layout, and that includes the 4-foot sidewalks on either side.
That includes the 4-foot side.
Well, 4 or 6 or whatever, yeah.
That's a lot to ask of a 40-foot right-of-way. So if you ever wanted to expand that, you would need to get some type of strip easements from the abutting property owners.
And Mr. Chairman, we have no problem in the condition, what I had written the town, but I have no problem in saying that grants an easement to either the town and or Mass DOT, who, you know, whoever the responsible party is, to construct that sidewalk if it's ever needed. Because they'd be doing the work. Similar to what they're doing in downtown Dennisport on Route 28 right now. I've had clients who've granted easements to Mass DOT for that very reason.
Give me just 1 second, please. Okay, well, since there's an existing sidewalk there, but again, this is something that's in the bylaw, and I would hate to approve this and a sidewalk dilapidates, and then there's no state money coming down to repair it, and the town's not going to repair it, and we allowed a developer who was supposed to put it in, not put it in. Okay. Again, there's one right there right now, so I'm not advocating putting a new sidewalk next to one. All right. It really, my concern was if there wasn't one there and there was nobody that was going to replace it, but to the cost of the town. So, what's the consensus of the board? Susan?
Sean, I think your concern is legitimate. I'm thinking of the CVS on the corner of Route 28 and Higgins Kroll Road.
Yeah.
That's got no sidewalk on Route 28. It stops right at the CVS driveway. And I've always wondered, how did they get away with not constructing a sidewalk? And the rest of that sidewalk heading back toward, toward Town Hall is not a great sidewalk, but it is a sidewalk. But you get to the CVS and it stops right at the driveway. You've got to walk either in the street or up on the lawn. And I always wondered, how did they get away with not building a sidewalk?
They weren't under the VCOD, and it's just a regular commercial property, which doesn't require sidewalks.
But how did the town let them get away with not putting in a sidewalk?
We don't require it up
It wasn't
there.
required. No.
It should have been required.
I don't know why the state didn't do every area. That's a very good question, because some areas they just, and I have yet to figure out why.
Well, see that again, that's my concern. We got to look again. This is one property. This is the only property, and so if we just start all of a sudden telling all the developers along Route 28, you don't have to, because if we say, this petitioner doesn't have to do it, I can tell you the next guy, because I've had, and Dick, we've all heard it. You let this guy do it, and then they come in with the pictures in the next presentation and show us.
Sean, what about language that would say it's still the responsibility of the owner to install the sidewalk unless the town or the state doesn't? Why not make an affirmative?
Well, that's kind of the language that I would like to see. We're not going to make you construct it, okay? But if that sidewalk disappears,
it's your
responsibility to replace it.
Right.
Now, would your client agree to that, Andrew?
Hold on a second, I'm writing something down.
Please tell me it's something similar to what Susan and I are suggesting so we can end this meeting.
Well, you have to understand that in the age of Zoom meetings, while I'm talking with you, I'm texting with my clients to get answers to these questions. They're listening to this whole thing. So,
I see. Okay.
it's not quite so simple where I can just turn to the person sitting next to me at a table.
I'm sorry. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that.
Well, Sean, social distancing and all that. I'm by myself in my office. So in all seriousness, there's a lot of seniors going to be in this property, so there's always going to be a need for a sidewalk. So what I heard Susan say is that you grant the easement and the developer will be required to pay for a replacement sidewalk on the property if the existing sidewalk disappears and is not replaced by the town, by the state.
Or the town.
Or the town.
Period.
Period. Okay, well, my only concern with that is that the state constructs sidewalks differently than local applicants construct sidewalks. And a local applicant...
I tell you what, if you want to say, we will agree that what the state puts in is sufficient. So if they don't put in an 8-foot wide sidewalk, which is big, okay, I mean, I know what an 8-foot sidewalk is, all right? Which would be nice because you get all that bike traffic on Route 28 too if you had 8-foot sidewalks. I think that was probably the idea when they put this thing in here. They foresaw that all these bicycles up and down 28 were going to jump up on a sidewalk.
Well, they suggest that the bikes always be they have their own lane, but that be in the road layout. The bikes are not supposed to be on the sidewalks, actually.
Well, when you got an 8-foot sidewalk, there's a lot of room. But anyway.
Well, no, Sean, this was an 8-foot easement. It was not anticipated to be an 8-foot sidewalk. You need some grass area next to it, sidewalk. So it was not intended to be and even if you look at the plan, Kieran's highlighting it, it was going to be a 6-foot sidewalk. But my concern is that, if you were just building.
The bylaw says, you read the bylaw, right?
So many times that I can't remember the section you must be looking at right now.
Well, it's 414.8.1-4, and it says, the sidewalk surfacing may be interrupted with cutouts for, this is for street trees. Okay, so if there's a cutout, it's 6 feet wide. If there's street cutouts, then it has to go to 8 feet. But this is the language, okay, that I'm comfortable with. It's basically what Susan said. If there's a sidewalk there, your client's not responsible for it. But if the sidewalk disappears or dilapidates and it's not replaced by the state or it's not replaced by the town, then it's your client's responsibility to put that sidewalk in. And that wouldn't only be for you. That's anybody that comes in. Because I want to be consistent with this. This is kind of like the sign code, okay? You know, the old, you want to build this sign this way, that way. You know, you can't really vary from this stuff because if we do, we're going to have this sidewalk issue with everybody. And I don't want to start eliminating that requirement unless the planning board wants to go and take it out. If you can convince them, go and eliminate it, then maybe you don't even have to worry about it.
Okay, no, that's fine. We can agree with that. Just be aware that if the sidewalk disappears or gets dilapidated, the replacement sidewalk's not going to connect up. It will be on our property because we can't build in the state layout. As long as that's understood, then the condition's fine.
Well, then maybe you can come back and ask for further relief and we can talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
But for purposes of what we're doing right now, I would be much more comfortable with that.
Okay. That is fine.
Okay. Everybody in agreement with that?
Yeah.
Dick?
Yeah, I think this, although I think if the sidewalk, let's say it gets dilapidated, the state ought to fix it. But that's,
I mean, I agree.
I assume they will.
Yeah.
But we do have seniors out there. I mean, it's a retirement community.
yeah, that's okay.
Okay. All right. So we have we've got that motion. Has that already been made, the motion? No, we haven't had a motion on that. Who's going to make a motion?
Can I do so moved?
Yes, you can. Okay, so moved. Andrew, you're writing down the language, right? Basically,
I am.
that we're going to waive that requirement. Are you granting an easement to the town? Correct?
To the town and/or Mass DOT as necessary
That's necessary.
to relocate the sidewalk if it's ever desired to be relocated, with a condition that if the existing sidewalk disappears or is dilapidated and is not replaced by the state or the town, that the developer will pay to put in a sidewalk.
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we got a motion made by Dick, seconded by Tom on the language that we just recited and Andrew wrote down. All those any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, Susan?
Aye.
Dick?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
I'm an aye on that one too. Carries unanimously. Okay, so I think we've concluded our business.
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman,
thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, if I
hold
could
on.
clarify something.
Yes.
Sorry. If you could look at the screen here for a second.
Okay.
Earlier tonight, I mentioned that we did not need any modulation relief along the front of the building.
Yeah.
Standard is 70 feet in the town of Yarmouth for modulation. In the VCOD, it is 50 feet. This section of the building is 54 feet. So this section of the building needs some modulation. So I spoke
The
incorrectly.
rest of it doesn't.
The rest of it doesn't. It's all jogged. There's bump outs all the way along, all the way over to here. So it's just this one section. There is a few inch bump out, but it doesn't meet the 5 feet that's required. And it's 54 feet long, which is exceeding the 50 foot that is the maximum under VCOD. 70 is the maximum under the regular zoning in town. So I apologize for speaking incorrectly earlier.
That's fine. No, that's no problem. Believe me, this is that's okay. I didn't want to suggest that anybody was making any material misrepresentations either. Okay,
Thank you.
I know everybody appears in front of this board on a regular basis. Everybody does a very nice job presenting. Like I said, we've all had a lot of experience with one another. And at the end of the day, while sometimes our discussions may get heated, at the end of the day, we all respect one another. And I would like to say that we're all friendly too. And I think that's very true. Andrew, on behalf of your client, I'm sorry that we didn't or weren't able to give him the relief that he wanted tonight. Okay. I would just suggest that if they're going to proceed with this under the VCOD and they want to do it before they, rewrite the bylaw, if that's in fact what they're going to do. Okay, so the next petitioner doesn't run into this problem, if that's their intent. If not, maybe you guys can sit down and draw up some type of plan that's more in compliance with that design standard, and we could revisit this. And that certainly wouldn't have to be a long time either. So
Are you suggesting, Mr. Chair, that there are some building modulation waivers that you would be willing to grant?
well, I don't want to speak for it, but I have to see something that looks like it's in compliance with it, because it's very, very strict. All right, it's not, when you have these things that say shall, it shouldn't be up to us, as Susan said, to grant a variance or a waiver or whatever. You really have to comply with the purpose and intent. Having said that, I think it was Dick that brought it up and made a very good point, or somebody did. One size obviously doesn't fit all, okay? So maybe there's a way. What I would like you as the petitioner, the developer, to do is to go sit down at the computer and work something out and see how close you come, and we can take another look at it, okay? I'm not saying a yes or no, and I'm not trying to say what I wouldn't agree to or what the others would or wouldn't agree to, okay? We certainly want businesses to be successful. We certainly want people to be able to redevelop their property. We have a set of guidelines we have here, which I think maybe they do need to be revisited, but it's a large section of our bylaw, and it has to do really with the redevelopment of Route 28. And so before we can just say yes, okay, because we shouldn't be the ones that are allowed to grant that relief. We should be able to do it. It should be with confidence that we're really adhering to the purpose and intent of the bylaw. I understand your point about variances, and you're right. A variance means we're giving you permission to violate the zoning because it says no. I understand that. But we do have a balance here that we do have to keep in line with what the voters actually expect, what the bylaw, the purpose and intent is. And I think that's the threshold that we've got to get over before we can give you that variance relief. It's not that we don't want to give you, at least from my perspective, okay? It's just that I couldn't get there with what you have. So food for thought. You have withdrawn your petition without prejudice. So if we see one another in the future on this project, and if we do, I hope we certainly at that point can grant you relief so your client can move forward with this.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
On that, I just want to tell you, as you are aware, that there is a 20-day appeal period from the time that this is clocked in with the town clerk. After that period is expired, as you know, you can come and see Sandy and pick up your decision and variance, grant a variance, and record it and return proof to us at the Board of Appeals. And Andrew, I will expect, you have my email address, I believe. It's on this stuff that's going back and forth. My email's on there. So if you want to email me over a copy of that decision, what we did agree to tonight, so I can do a read through of it.
Will do.
Okay.
I will do that.
And I'll get that signed and we'll get it filed.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate it.
Good night.
Thank you,
Thank
Karen.
you.
Thank you very much, Karen. Appreciate it. Kathy, are we adjourned?
Do you
Motion to
take a
adjourn.
motion? Yep.
Motion to adjourn. Somebody give me a motion.
I gave you a motion to adjourn.
Okay, we got a second? No second?
Second.
Want to sit here? Okay, we got a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. I think I heard a majority that's in favor. Tom Barron, nice to see you tonight. Thank you. Kathy, thank you very much. Mark, thank you very much for your time. This is our first Zoom hearing, and I thought it went well. And everybody stay safe. Is there anything else anybody else wants to add? No?
No?
Okay, well,
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, David.
let's all zoom out and,
Go have
all
dinner.
right. Oh, yeah, go have dinner. All right. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.
And thanks a lot, Kathy. Appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
All
Thanks.
right.
Bye, Sean.
Good night. Bye, Mark.
Night,
Take care.
everybody.
Thank you.